Hello and welcome back to Who's Views. Yes, here we are. The WHOTASTIC panel is with me here. Welcome everybody. Here's another program in our 60th anniversary of programs celebrating our beloved Time Lord. As you can see, I'm joined by Paul, Brendan, Bedouia, and a big hello to our special guest for this particular show. It's the third Doctor in part himself. Yes, it's Ian. Hello, Ian.
Hi, Ian.
Hello.
Right, so everybody, we're here to look at the 60th anniversary concert that played at the end of October. So Ian, you're joining us tonight because you were actually there at Hoddinot Hall in Cardiff. So tell us a little bit about what it was like.
It was surreal in some respects because I got there. I was quite lucky. I had the opportunity of getting sort of what you might call a privileged access, and so we got there and we were given our tickets. They were giving everybody a sticker with a number on it. I don't think it meant where you were in the queue. They just assigned tickets for controlling crowds. And we were able to collect that and then go and have something to eat. I was there with a friend. And then go back. And we were escorted right to the front, which was, great, really. And so when they opened the doors, we were allowed in first. And my friend said to me, "Where do you want to sit?" And I said, "The front. I want the front." And said, "There's some seats reserved there." And I said, "That's exactly where I want to go next to, because I'm probably going to sit next to somebody really interesting." And, just take your chance. And I was sat next to Julie Gardner, which was great. I said to my friend, as long as it's not Chris Chibnall, because, 5 years of pent-up frustration might just come out. But no, it was Julie Gardner, and then it was Chris Chibnall. So he was still within striking distance, but I managed to stay calm.
Well restrained.
I'm pleased he did.
Get in and then get thrown out straight away would have been a little bit embarrassing, probably. And my friend would have killed me. But
did Julie say anything to you?
No. Oh. Julie occasionally looked and made a couple of little comments just during the course of the things, and she comes across as lovely. I didn't realize at first. I thought the last thing that I knew about Julie Gardner was she still had the dark curly hair, but this lady was blonde, but she was unmistakably Julie Gardner. And yes, she's gone blonde, but
very LA.
And then Chibnall, and then Russell T Davies, and then Moffat. And
so what was the atmosphere like in the hall? I mean, and tell people that for those of us that have never been there, or even those that have never been to Cardiff, is it a big place or is it a medium size? What's it like?
The auditorium's quite large. You go in at the back, and then it's just rows of seats, and then what you would call the orchestra pit, and then the big wall and the raised seats. It's large, but it's not enormous. You're not talking Royal Albert Hall or anything like that, but it's obviously designed for the acoustics. And there was a real sense of excitement leading up to it. There really was, and there was nobody under 18. I think I've seen online somewhere some questions about why younger kids weren't allowed there, but I don't think it was that kind of event, not like the previous concerts. You go back 10 years, the Albert Hall, places like that, which would, with monsters stomping around and everything. It wasn't that kind of event. The only real sop, if you like, to actual artifacts from the show was the police box in the corner. Aside from that, it was just a concert, And I think because it was being recorded for broadcast radio and obviously now TV, they were probably not wanting the risk of any younger kids perhaps crying or screaming or shouting or losing their composure, or hurling abuse at Chris Chibnall. I don't know.
Who knows about that one? I mean, I do get the impression that they may have been a little bit tentative about all that as well. It's obvious that they are aware that there's still divisions.
When he was announced as going to that, I thought, blimey, he's got some brass neck and brave at the same time, to turn up at that. But I suppose at the end of the day, he's got a right to be there. I couldn't stand a second of his era at all, but he had a right to be there. So, fair play to him for turning up and doing a speaky bit. But he certainly wasn't the star attraction for me by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, there were some people in cosplay. You know, I think there's one that's on Instagram, Two-Hearted Cosplay, he's there as Troughton, and with a couple of his friends and things, and one or two others. But yeah, it was an exciting event. It was something. There hadn't been something like this for a while, had there? There always used to be things like that. There was always things that marked Doctor Who out as being special, and then that just stopped. Yeah. It just went away, just like the merchandise in the shops just went away. You know, you get merchandise now, and it's B&M specials, isn't it? Whereas it used to be Toys R Us, massive walls and displays and things, and cropping up in other department stores everywhere. Doctor Who was everywhere, and then it seemed to be nowhere.
Yeah.
And you just got a feeling like it was back in those. I hate to use the term glory days, but it was back in those glory days, really.
The recording itself, Ian, it was broadcast over 2 hours. How long did the recording take?
It finished at around between 20 past and 10:30. So I think the whole event was going for about 2 hours, 20 minutes.
That's probably the other reason why the kids weren't there then, or young people weren't there.
Yeah, very possibly. And there was a 15-20 minute break in the middle as well. And when I listened to it on the radio, there were certainly bits that were cut out.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
But you can let us know about that as we start to talk about it all through this. You can say, "Well, yeah, well, actually, at this point, this is where we went. This is where we did this."
I think can you reconstruct them with diagrams and photographs and that kind of thing? That'd be great.
I'll try. I think it'd make a really good CD release, though.
Or animate them. That'd be great. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll come out on CD as part of the BBC's, at the BBC range, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So we are talking about the BBC at 60 concert, which was held in October at Hoddinot Hall, as Ian's saying there with Cardiff. And it was broadcast on BBC Radio 2 and on the iPlayer and on the Sounds app. I'm trying to get all the terminology correct, even though I don't really understand most of it. It was all there, though. It's being available. So hopefully you've managed to hear that. But I'm sure there'll be a commercial release at some point about this, because we are led to believe it was filmed as well. So hopefully that might even come on a box set of the Blu-rays and what have you. So, I mean, so this is our review.
I think it's on BBC 4 in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So at the time of recording this episode, you have to keep an eye out through the schedules on that. Yeah. So what we've got there is really we're here now to review this, and we've all heard the concert, haven't we, guys?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
A delayed response. Yeah, we've all heard the concert. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let's have a look at that. We are celebrating 60 years of our favorite Time Lord, and this, of course, was part of it. So, I want to just mention very briefly as well that this was hosted by BBC Radio 2 presenter and Doctor Who fan Jo Wiley. Now, Jo's been around Doctor Who for quite some time now, so she, for them, would have been the natural choice to present this, tying herself in with both being a Doctor Who fan and also being on BBC Radio for many, many, many years. And I have to say, she looked absolutely stunning. Congratulations to Jo for being beautiful and wonderful and actually dressing up for the occasion. And I say that because, she seems to be the only one that did. And gentlemen, up your game. You were going to a concert here, for heaven's sake. You weren't going for about an hour down the boozer. I mean, look, she stands out so well there. She puts the effort in, and this little turn up in what they usually wear every single day. Oh, unbelievable. But anyway, there we go. That's what they're like. So it started with the now famous 11th Doctor theme, I Am the Doctor. So thoughts on that, everybody?
Well, I have to say it's one of my favourite pieces. I remember it being played in the 11th hour. I think it is Matt Smith runs to the TARDIS to see the TARDIS for the first time. A great piece of music, and it's one of my favourite tracks. And I think one thing about the concert was that Murray Gold, I think, has been sadly missed.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. Chip in, guys.
That Matt Smith piece is very evocative. It does the job. It identifies itself straight to that character, just like Eccleston's did, and just like Tennant's did. It was and it remains. I mean, we're talking 12, 13 years on now, and it's still Matt Smith straight away. You hear it, and you immediately identify. And when they started with that, I mean, it was a curious choice. I mean, if they're celebrating Doctor Who since its return, but also throwing back to the full 60 years, if they were going to start with something from New Who, you might have thought they might have come back with something going back to Eccleston or anything like that. But to go straight in with Matt Smith was, quite brave. Probably not quite what I expected them to start with. But it really set the tone. And, you just immediately get Matt Smith in your head, and then you're immediately grinning, aren't you? 'Cause Matt Smith just makes you smile, doesn't he?
Well, that's probably why, Ian, they actually started with that, because, that tune has now become so familiar and also beloved with millions of Doctor Who fans around the world. So and because it's rip roaring in sense as well. I mean, as you're saying there, you picture Matt Smith as the Doctor from various episodes here, from the 11th hour onwards. Timothy and Bedwell, what did you think about this particular one?
Well, I mean, you've just said it there. It's iconic with seeing him at Stonehenge, for example. You've got the choir and the strings. There's a fantastic rhythmic quality. It's very confirmatory. It's very reinforcing that this is his identity. It's very powerful. We know the bit in 11th hour when he kind of walks towards the camera, doesn't he? And I am the Doctor. And it's got that confidence about it when he finds himself. And I think the music really does echo that. It's a powerful piece. And I think it's not a surprising start, because actually when you look at the whole night, it was very Doctor companion all the way through. And I think they're going back to the basics, aren't they? So I think this was a strong start, as it was for Matt Smith. I mean, remember, I think when Murray Gold came on later on, he said the trigger for this music was the gangly walk of Matt Smith. He said that was it. Yeah. And so...
Was it good for you to hear this again?
Yeah, so for me, this particular piece of music has some very happy memories for me, because for those who remember the Doctor Who experience, this was the track that was played over the montage sequence at the very start. So the what we call the crack room, where people would get introduced to their adventure, basically. And just hearing this music again took me back to that really dark room with one projector, playing this montage of not just Matt Smith. Obviously it's predominantly associated with Matt Smith, but all the Doctors we'd had up until that point, and setting it up to go on for the doors to open and you went on this adventure. So it reminds me of that straight away and brings me back into that really dark nondescript space. But from that, you got the excitement and the adrenaline of everyone who's in your group, and you were taken through the walk-through adventure bit. So it's always great to hear that piece of music.
Ian, what was it like actually with the audience when this was the first track that was played? You were saying there it was unusual for it to be, you were expecting this one to be the first one. What was the reaction like?
You just got that buzz. It was. When you're there, and it might sound obvious, but you're in front of this huge orchestra and they're playing it. You don't just hear it, you feel it as well. It goes through you, but they're just struck straight into it. And you hear everybody, a few people are like breathless gasps and things, and that sort of excitement. And it was just good to hear, people were immediately into it. And I think, again, that's probably why they did it. It immediately got people into that vibe of how they used to enjoy Doctor Who, and they were just sort of like settling back and enjoying the start of this 2.5-hour ride. But yeah, there was that buzz of excitement. I mean, that happened with the majority of the tracks that they played, to be quite honest. But yeah.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because I mean, you did mention that, and I do agree with you. It was as though they were trying to remind us of how things possibly were through this music and coming through. And at this point, I just want to say that the orchestra itself, this is the BBC National Orchestra of Wales, who have been working on Doctor Who since 2006, Runaway Bride, music conducted, as we know, by Murray Gold, and conducted by Alistair King, and also involving the BBC singers, who are just up there at the top there. Cooey. So yeah, so we've got all of those in there as well. So then we went on to another familiar piece. So many of us will have the Murray Gold soundtrack CD releases that have been released over the years by Silver Screen. So we had the next one now, which was All the Strange Creatures. Now this is where I started to think, everybody, there's a pattern coming here. This is something that I was expecting to hear, to be quite honest, because it was reminding us of, like we've just said there, the series that had been, the monsters that had been in here, but it was trying to, I think, and correct me if you think otherwise, I think it was trying to make a cozy atmosphere here to say, you're all right.
Well, it was the best of, wasn't it? It's the greatest hits of Murray Gold, really. So this is quite an iconic one. It's like having a Now album for just Doctor Who, so this had to be on the list. And so
that'll happen one day, you know. I'm surprised it's not here with us in November 2023, to be honest, but I'm sure it's going to happen.
Now and Who, you can play around with the 3 letters each, but I mean, I think with a lot of these tracks that are go-to ones for Doctor Who fans of the new era, especially, because I think we'll discuss when we get to the classic one the difference that's been projected, but you can see from the proms the kids' faces when this was played the first time to the audience, and the kids' faces when the monsters were parading to this song. You can also see David Tennant in one of his trailers and that running around with a tracking device. It's a vibrant piece. It just shows you the blancmange of blooming monsters we're going to have in this series, and it's just an exciting, lively piece, just like I Am the Doctor. These are very positive, confident starts. It's a good launch pad, because I think this concert had to do more than just get us nostalgic. This had to really reboot. It really had to sell and get us all excited again. And I think these pieces do.
One of the knacks, of course, of sorry, Paul. One of the knacks of actually when you're doing a concert, if you look at the big stars, and I'm talking people like Madonna here, you know, who's currently on her latest world tour. You know, there's a particular way to open a show, the hook and the settle in, and those first two get the audience going, wow. And I think this is exactly what they were trying to do here. What were you saying, Paul?
Well, I agree with that, because when you go to see a band in concert, you want to hear the ones you can sing along to. You're not as keen on the new stuff, you know. So you get, you know what I mean. You kind of get really fired up about the old greatest hits, as Brendan said, and I think that did that for me, because prior to listening to the concert, I watched Stolen Earth just to get a flavour of. I wasn't really up for the 60th, but really got me really excited to remember how much fun it was when RTD was doing it, and this concert done the same thing. It really excited me. Like Brendan's saying, they have to really get people back on board and get excited about what's coming, and it's got me already, which I'm really pleased about.
Well, that's good to know, because I'd be very interested to know how many fans have actually heard from this. So if you're watching this now, let us know in the comments box down below. What were your opinions of the concert? When did you hear it? Have you heard it? If you've come across us and you haven't heard it, let us know. I want to know how many people have actually heard the concert, how many people have been excited about it. That's what this is all about. It is Who's Views, so let us know what you thought about this one. So yeah, All the Strange Creatures. Yeah, so it did seem to be the ideal second choice, didn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if that track was, I know it's on the Series 3 album, isn't it? I think. Yeah. I don't know if that track was used back in the time prior to Series 3 being televised. I don't know if that track was used as the background for a sort of like preview reel for that series as well. But I've always liked that, because there's so many elements of different stories that have gone through that series or that season, and always liked it. And yeah, I agree with comments made. I think that's a settling in one. Because I mean, obviously, Russell T Davies has brought Murray Gold back, and
there's a reason for that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we know the direction or the taste that the music is going to go in, the direction that the music's going to go in, and it was probably getting us ready for it, whetting the appetite, if you like, as well as a healthy dose of nostalgia, which is always a good thing, isn't it? we love nostalgia, don't we, Doctor Who fans? We love
Oh, we do, yeah. We live on it, yeah.
I think that's the point at the moment, though. Here we are celebrating 60 years of the show, and we have to be nostalgic at this particular point, especially in this month of November 2023. We have to be, because that's what it's about. It's about remembering 60 years of this wonderful show being around, and some of us being around all our lives as part of that. And it's good that we are actually looking at that nostalgic element, which actually looks brilliantly and segues brilliantly into the next section, because what came up then was, of course, what they're now referring to, and I really don't like the term, but classic Who. Now, I have to be honest with everybody, guys, even though it was wonderful to see both Mark Ayres and Peter Howell here, I was a little bit disappointed about this. I'm obviously, because I'm a huge fan of Doctor Who. And yes, I know there was 26 years of music to choose from, which is very, very difficult. But this was the same thing we got 10 years ago with a couple of extra bits in it. You know, it was sort of stretched out a little bit. And I knew what was going to happen straight from, the TARDIS onwards. I knew what they were going to do, because they've been playing it, quite rightly, at various gigs around the place for the last 10 years. I was hoping that they would have allowed a little bit more time for a little bit more, involvement from those original 26 years. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you're right. It could have been better to have a wee bit longer, maybe another 10 minutes or so, to make it half an hour, because it's about would be quite good. But it was 20 minutes into the program, and I was quite excited by it when the classic music came on, especially the bit from Logopolis. That had me. I was filling up when you heard Tom's voice. The regeneration scene was fantastic, and I thought that really filled me with emotion. But I agree, I wish it was longer, because there's so much to cover. They could give us much more, and half an hour of the show wouldn't be asking for too much, would it?
I don't think so.
No,
I think this is what I wanted to kind of say, which is I was wanting something different as well, but I don't want to sound like a spoiled Doctor Who brat, because we've been spoiled really since 2005 with proms, concerts, and a ramp up of what we can expect as fans, which we didn't get as classic fans. So the expectations have gone higher since 2005. So I don't want to sound spoiled that my expectations are we need loads of stuff as if we are very needy people. So it is a shame in one way that the classic period wasn't adapted a bit more. But of course, there were fantastic pieces, and they had elaborated on them a bit. I was pleased with that, because it wasn't identical to what we heard.
No, they'd added a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the City of Death, that extended a bit, the Raston Rory Robot battle with the Cybermen, I loved that bit. There was a lovely, it was much more developed with the Five Doctors Eye of Orion bit, I felt. And I thought it was that's beautiful music. I think that the problem we've got with classic versus New Who music is there was incidental music in the classic series. And yes, you got lovely touches in City of Death, and you thought, oh, wow, that's spectacular. I remember at the time being a kid thinking, God, that's very pretty. And it makes me a bit sad when they all say goodbye at the end of the Eiffel Tower. Little bits like that. Yes, of course, Logopolis, that kind of descent as it goes down, that was really, a very iconic moment. But it was seen as incidental music, whereas now it's more of a soundtrack, isn't it? And it's it's trying to make it sound big budget. It's trying to compete with movies, and it's a different thing. So Maury Gold is going to trounce everybody in the range and the length of material and the range of emotion. Because I suppose the program since 2005 has gone very, very character driven, very emotion driven, and very intense. And therefore the music does that. Whereas I think Dudley Simpson and all the others, they were given a different task, weren't they? So I think, as you said, Paul, there's a range of 26 years there, and I can think of ones from Kinder and everywhere that would have been good. However, we're not comparing the same beasts, really, are we?
No, well, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, because the importance of, the incidental music was still important throughout the original. We're still celebrating it today. Dudley Simpson. We've been talking about the releases coming soon from Terror. So everything's on the way. We've got all this sort of stuff. And when you do look at some of those episodes and those original, I think it is important. I don't like it when people say that the original series wasn't emotional in its music. It really is. It really is, and it really can be.
I use a comparative. It's more emotional now. It's more character driven now. That's a fact. It was story driven before. That's why we loved it. But it was incidental music before, and there's a distinct technical difference in what's going on here.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that would also some people would come on and say, well, that's why it's so overpowering in the new series
Yeah.
as well, because it should still be incidental
That
music.
was the
But when you
director's
when you're looking at lovely things like, you know, Paul mentioned the Logopolis music there, that is wonderful. But you've also got you know, especially in the 80s, you had themes for the characters. I would have been nice to have a compilation of those themes, maybe. You know, Tegan's theme, Nissa's theme, Adric's theme, the Fifth Doctor's theme, all these sort of things. It would have been nice to have a little bit more. But like with 10 years ago, in my opinion, I think they brushed over it a little bit. Ian, what was the response to...
Didn't we? And his music, for example, would have been good. He's releasing stuff now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, to have some of Dominic's stuff or whomever, and they would have done that as well. They would have been delighted. Ian, what was the response to this in the hall?
There was some of the crusty old person personally, but so I don't really want to say things like the younger element. But there was some of those sort of like in their early 20s, say, that were there that I don't think immediately clicked who these two guys were. Whereas, you know, when you go back as far as what we do, you know, they're iconic names, aren't they? So yes, I'd heard the music before and knew it was pretty much a retread, but to have them actually in the room was great.
Can I ask you, Ian, you know, when they did the proms, they used to play this music with a video screen. Yeah. So if you didn't know it, there was a reminder. They weren't doing that. Did they do that?
No, there was no video screens at all. It was literally just music. No screens at all. But and it was great to see them. It was great to be in the same room as them, you know, because they played such a part in something that you played a huge part in your life for years, you know. So it was great to see them there and hear from them, because obviously they got interviewed and everything. But it was well received, and the Tom Baker bit, yes, that got me right there, you know. I mean, it was Pertwee, as you know, Third Doctor might suggest. It was Pertwee for me, and then Tom Baker, and that end bit from Logopolis, when you hear it, it just gives you chills. And you know, the new stuff, I think the only equivalent one for me in the new stuff is when Tennant left with the I Don't Want to Go, and that bit, because they also played that later as well, and that's the only one of the regeneration bits of music that's really got to me in the same way. But yeah, Tom Baker, City of Death, you can't not like City of Death, can you? And it's always great to hear, because, you know, you have it on a CD, you're always going to play it, aren't you? But
well, hopefully that'll happen at some point. If anybody from Silver Screen's watching, we'd love that. That would be fantastic.
Well, you need to have it on your headphones and try and cross the road with them on, you know, without using a telephone crossing or something. That's what you need to do.
I mean, the whole point of this particular segment 10 years ago in the 50th anniversary concert at Albert Hall was to celebrate the Radiophonic Workshop and their involvement and the important role that they played in creating the world of Doctor Who through sound effects and through the music, you know, and everything that they put into it, because they've been involved all those years. So it was quite right to do it. It's nice to know that it was well received. I would say to any younger fans that don't know who this is, go back and watch original Doctor Who. Go and listen to some of the downloads that you can get now, because it's it's crucial that you do that if you want to be a Doctor Who fan. You can't just look at 2005, in my opinion, onwards. You've got to go and look back at the history.
Well, there's no excuse now because the iPlayers come into effect, so you've got all that to look at.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, you can go and look at all that. It was nice as well. You mentioned there, Ian, that both Mark and Peter were interviewed. And it was great that Peter again mentioned Delia Derbyshire as part of this, a significant figure to this very day in what we're celebrating here.
Absolutely. That lady was a genius, years ahead of her time. When we were waiting to go in, there was a lovely old lady that was a BBC employee, but she was well into her 70s.
Fabulous.
And she went to various locations to basically crowd control and make sure everybody that should be there was there. And I was talking to her for about 20 minutes before going in, and I think actually she may have been in her 80s. And but she was telling me about all the stuff that she used to do at the original studios, and she'd spend time at Lime Grove and everything else, where they did all the music recordings that they did with famous bands and things when they were up and coming. And she'd actually met Delia Derbyshire. And
oh wow!
She was telling me about when she'd met her. I'm like, I'm just jaw on the floor, you know, worshipping this woman, because she just, you're almost like one stage of separation away from Delia Derbyshire at that point.
Yeah.
You know, and there's not going to be many opportunities you have of that in 2023.
No.
But she'd been present at the recording of some of the Hancock's half hours. I mean, she goes back to the 1950s, so you know, she must have been working there from a very, very young age.
Wow.
So I mean, the Hancock's half hours were recorded in the 50s, the radio ones.
Yeah. Of course.
So to go back to that, I mean, that's 70 odd years in itself, isn't it? So she must have been pushing 90.
And how brilliant though that she's at this.
Yeah. I think she's definitely been kept on. But amazing lady, and great to talk to. Great opportunity to talk to somebody like that. But she knew Delia Derbyshire.
I can't get over that. I don't think you know. Apart from years ago when I met Verity, of course, that would have been the nearest. I think. William. I don't even know if William Russell ever met Verity Lambert, but definitely, obviously, you know, Verity. That's amazing. But there was somebody else. Ian, did you get to see this other element of Classic Who?
Oh yeah, he was. I didn't realise he was there at first. He sort of like sneaked out because there was a row.
He's very subtly dressed as normal, isn't he?
I like his coat.
You showed that photo from the back of the crowd earlier. And I can see myself and my friend in that, and sort of like count along. But out of all the people that were there, Sylvester was right at the far end, and he's not a tall man. So you didn't realise until he actually announced that he was there. You just didn't realise. You didn't realise it was there at all. But it was great to see.
Was that the bit where Joe Wiley announced him, or did people know he was there beforehand?
No, it was when she announced him.
She went, look, by the way, Sylvester McCoy's here.
Yeah.
Wow.
When Chris Chibnall came out first with Julie Gardner, and then there was a bit of a gap, and then Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat came out, and that's where you got the applause. And then the others sort of like came out with them. So I think in this haze of applause for Russell T Davies, because let's face it, it was for Russell T Davies, wasn't it? I think Sylvester McCoy coming in was probably missed. I think the people around him would have obviously realised it was him, but until Joe Wiley announced him, I hadn't got a clue, and he was literally about 8 seats to my left. I had no idea.
No! Well, it's a nice surprise. It was a nice surprise that he actually was there, and good for him for turning up. You know, flying the flag for Doctor Who 63 to 89.
Absolutely, that.
Yeah.
Really sort of like brought original Who.
Yeah.
Right into the room. Yeah.
Well, it may have been more or less the same playlist that they played 10 years ago, in which the guys have quite rightly milked to death over the last 10 years, of whichever gigs they can go to. I mean, it's great to actually show that segment at Glastonbury or wherever you're going to be able to say, look, Doctor Who's still there. And I think that's brilliant. You can see a lot of that stuff, if you haven't found it already, on the BBC Radiophonic Workshops YouTube page. There you go.
I have to say, I'm sure that all the fans now think that Sylvester is in the specials because he was there.
Oh, well, yeah. You have to put that room around, Paul, though. You have to do that. Yeah, no, that's great. Well, I was just glad that, even though I'd heard it before, I was glad there was something that I would have liked to have seen something different. I would have liked to see something a little bit longer. And next time, I wouldn't like them all mashed up. I would actually like to see them integrated. Like you mentioned, guys, that you mentioned in The City of Death, that's really rousing and just as powerful as anything that Murray Gold has actually done in the new modern era as well. That would be great to intermingle with them. You know, and there's some great classics there where you could just put one in like they've done there. So that took us on there. We had an interview there with Joe Wiley talking to both Peter and Mark there, which was wonderful. And then they moved on into the concert to what I have to say is probably one of my favourite pieces in modern Doctor Who to date. And it was Abigail's song. This is from the Matt Smith Christmas special from 2010, A Christmas Carol. Now, I absolutely love and adore this. I've actually played it in my Christmas special radio show on my radio show there, which was broadcast on a Christmas Eve, because it sums up everything for me that Christmas actually is. I just wish they'd made more of it in the series, because the lyrics is silence is all around. Now look what happens in series 6. And then towards the end of Matt's time, when the silence come into it, I wish they played more of that sort of, with the music. There's a hint coming here of something happening. You know what I mean?
it's a beautiful song and beautifully sung. I don't remember the name of the lady who sang it at the concert, but Catherine Jenkins sang it in Christmas Carol.
This was
fabulous.
Rebecca Lee.
Rebecca Lee. She did it beautifully as well. But Christmas Carol is one of my favourite Christmas specials. It's nice to get away from modern day Earth for that Christmas and be kind of Victorian times a little bit, or Victorian on another planet. But it was interesting, a different vibe. But the song was beautiful, and like you say, GT, is a really wonderful feeling of Christmas. It was great, lovely.
I also think when people say, some people loved the idea that Murray Gold was coming back. I was one of those. You hear other people who criticise it. If you listen to this track, you think, how far has Doctor Who come? You've got a composer of that quality. He can write songs for Doctor Who. He can write opera for Doctor Who. He can do instrumental sweeps. He can do emotion. I mean, we're happy and so lucky to have him. I think he can really, really lift the show and give it positivity, which it blooming well needs. And this track is beautiful. The haunting into the shadow she keeps singing, and when she hits those sweeping high notes, and it echoed the program very well, very clever, because I think Stephen Moffat said he wrote in the director's notes, write a good song.
That's all he said.
I know he likes to be
good direction. Yeah,
he might be being modest a bit there, but because Murray Gold actually says that RTD is a little bit more specific about what he wants.
Bossy, he's bossy.
Yeah. This is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I have to say, I sometimes try and trick my parents. I sometimes play a track because they think, oh, Doctor Who's a bit play something like that, and they go, where's that from? That's from Doctor Who. That's the quality of this now.
And they say shut the front door or what to that effect, don't they?
Yeah. The track was also dedicated, of course, to Michael Gambon, who had passed just a few weeks prior to this concert happening, which was a lovely thing to do, of course. But yeah, I mean, Ian, again, this was the first time, as far as I'm aware, this has been premiered at a concert. I don't remember it being at any of the Albert Hall gigs. What was coming through from the audience at this particular point here? Was this one of those gaffes you were mentioning at the top of the show?
I think when they announced this one, and yeah, it was a really nice touch that they gave a name check to Michael Gambon. But Catherine Jenkins is such a good singer.
Oh, totally.
It's one of those songs, isn't it? The benchmark is so high.
Yeah.
That I would not have I mean, I can't sing to save my life anyway, or play an instrument, but I would not have wanted to be that BBC singer lady that took this role on. I mean, there was two, you can see from the original picture, there's two rows of singers up there, and she was front row on our left as we looked at her, and she just sort of like went to one side. So she was standing very much apart from the rest of them. So she's there. So what you see front row, right on our left, that's her. And she moved to the side. And
wow,
you just think, my God, good luck with this one. And she absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
I've got to say, to be honest, when I was listening to it on the radio, on Sunday night is music night, I didn't think the audio was that good, actually.
Oh, really?
I didn't think it conveyed how it. I heard they played Shooty's theme on 15th theme on, I think, Zoe Ball's breakfast show on the Thursday or the Friday prior to this concert being on. And I caught it on there, and I listened to it, a lot. I played it over and over and over, and the audio quality was fantastic. And then, so I'm comparing that. That was like 2 days before they played the whole concert on the radio, and I just thought it just didn't sound as good. It didn't sound as good at all. And the recording that they played on Zoe Ball was from the concert, because there was all the applause at the end and everything. It just sounded different. So. However you feel that this song that the lady sang was good, I honestly tell you, it was so much more better to hear it there. But the radio didn't convey how good it sounded.
Well, considering Bedouin, that they recorded this at the Hoddinot Hall, that's a bit concerning.
Yeah, I mean the technicalities of trying to get something onto the radio, and I can completely understand how being in that moment, it's difficult to convey how good a singer is when it's turning it into a digital signal and being recorded. In the old days it'd be onto tape, but it's now just digital files of stuff, isn't it? And
Yeah.
It's the same reason I love vinyl records, because there's something cleaner or something different about that sound on a record than it is to hear a digital thing, which is just too crisp and too clean. It's a different. It's a very different sound, and it's very subtle, but your brain can highlight it to you. And I mean, credit to the singer for trying to match Catherine Jenkins. I remember Catherine from when she was a chorister in small town in South Wales, and she was an astonishing singer then, who won, what was it, National Chorister of the Year or something like that, and was always going to go to massive things. So to have Catherine Jenkins do something on Doctor Who that was so evocative and powerful, it's tough for anyone other than her to do it. And credit to, I think you said Rebecca Lee, was it?
It's Rebecca Lee from the BBC Singers, and she did. I think she did a cracking job, because I mean that track, of course, wasn't made available on the Christmas Carol CD for the soundtrack to that. And I honestly love it. I think it's my favorite piece of Murray Gold music ever, actually, because it's just so. It's not Doctor Who, but it is Doctor Who in some weird way that I can never ever describe. It's magical. It's just beautiful. And as I say, I tend to play it on Christmas Eve because you've got that sort of lovely, gentle, spiritual, gorgeous, relaxing sort of dead at night Christmas Eve type feel. And it just suited that episode as well beautifully. I mean, what a star Abigail's song is, out of all the Doctor. But to have it played at this, and this is called The Sound of WHOSIC, my ears were just like, way. I was so surprised by it, and it was really at this point, having just come off the back of the classic stuff, as they call it. Wow, I was so happy to hear this. I thought, this is unusual. This one has taken me by surprise. It
is a beautiful track. It is really a beautiful track, and Catherine Jenkins is incredible, and this lady was amazing. She did an amazing job of it. She really did.
So a round of applause for Rebecca Lee. Well done there. And also for the song as well. Absolutely fantastic. At this point, then, Joe Wiley talks to Stephen Moffat, who comes on. And he is, well, what more can you say? He's just Stephen Moffat. I mean that's a fair point, isn't it? There are no pictures of him actually speaking to Joe. These come from Joe's own Twitter/X handle photographs on her page. She didn't have one of him there, but basically he just came along saying, and explained nothing in a very Moffat way. He was just very him. Do you know what I mean about this, guys?
He was his usual silly self, wasn't he? I mean, that's what he does,
Yeah, he just wrote The Doctor, which was a very Terence Dicks things to say. It was just he was trying to highlight the fact that to him the Doctor is the Doctor. He also mentioned that he mentioned Brendan, he mentioned Matt Smith and his walk, as you mentioned there before, and then he also said that with Capaldi, even Capaldi's jokes will scare the crap out of you. It was just Moffat being Moffat, but it was nice to hear him just being himself.
But at least Moffat has a good energy. He kind of he like RTD. He's very enthusiastic and he's up for a laugh. He doesn't take himself too seriously, I don't think.
I like the fact that Moffat is contained, though. He's not all this.
Yeah.
No, he's very like, this is happening. Yeah.
He could be confident that he did. I mean, he mentioned it, didn't he? He mentioned the Day of the Doctor because of all the tasks, he had a hell of a task. And just like the 5 Doctors, when things were changed all the time, he was talking about, I only had one doctor. Oh, did Clara? And, I mean, bless him. When he says he's had a period when he can just watch Doctor Who and enjoy, and they'll all say that. But, I can understand, because I don't think any of us would have envied that task at all, because you cannot please everybody.
No. And you shouldn't either. You absolutely shouldn't. So, Ian, at this point, when the guests are coming on, because of course this is all, on radio, we can't actually see it at this point. Were they basically coming on and then being dragged off after their bit? Was somebody actually in front of them going, right, you've got 2 minutes, go?
No, they were allowed to. They were allowed to speak. I mean, Jo was very much in control. She was guiding them and everything, but they spoke for as long as they wanted to, or as long as Jo wanted them to. They just got up from their seat, walked over to a microphone, spoke with her, and then went and sat down again. And
I suppose that's the beauty of recording this, though, as well, because if they tend to waffle, they can cut it down, can't they?
Absolutely, and they cut quite a bit of Russell T Davies's out. But they,
oh really?
Yes, they. But yeah, I mean, it was like you said, he was talking without really saying a tremendous amount, but still getting the laughs anyway. But that is a skill that Moffat has, and I think he had quite a. He didn't just have a difficult job with the 50th, which he certainly did, but I think his whole era, certainly towards the end, wasn't an easy time for him either. I think Capaldi's era, I don't think, went quite the way that he or Capaldi probably wanted it to go, and I think he was certainly getting some pressures from above to push it in a direction that it ultimately went in. With the hints of gender swapping and then gender swapping, swapping Time Lords and Missy and everything else.
Well, it was good to see. It was good to see Stephen actually coming into the show here on the concert and actually doing that and just being himself, wasn't it? It was brilliant, because it also then led us to what I would call in the concert a fan favorite. And I think this one is actually also a safe fan favorite. This is Gallifrey was performed again. I don't know how many times I've now heard this live. I've actually lost count. I have to be honest, though, the magic for this, which I felt on first broadcast, has now gone. It's disappeared. I'd love it. Don't get me wrong. I've put in my notes here that, it's got the grandeur. The music has kept a huge mystery, the mystery surrounding the Time Lords, which has now just gone haywire. It's all over the shop now. But this piece originally had that, because here was Gallifrey being introduced to the series again after so many years away. We now know that it's gone. So as fans, we're actually feeling a loss there as well. And this landscape, this music captures that brilliantly back in 2007. But I think I've heard it so many times now, and also because I'm getting older as well, that sort of magic isn't quite there now, but it's still a lovely piece. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I think it's a really nice piece, and the thing about it is, the way you may have felt it's waned a bit is because Gallifrey was just new, as you said, and it was still a little few layers of mystery coming out of the series with that piece of music. And when David Tennant tells Martha about the history of the Time Lords and Captain Jack and all that kind of stuff, you get a lovely picture, like the picture you showed of the Time Lord by the Citadel, all that kind of stuff. Great image and great setup of some of the backstory that we're getting slowly, piece by piece. But since then, Gallifrey's been mucked about a bit, and lots of things have happened, and the mystery's kind of gone a little bit, which is a real shame. But it's a lovely piece of music nonetheless.
Well, what do you guys get from when you hear this? Do you get that tingle that I got originally the first few times, or have you guys heard it an awful lot now as well? Because I do call it a fan favourite for a reason.
It's definitely a favourite. It's a favourite because it's good, and it's a favourite because it reminds you of all those things. I think the thing when you first saw it, absolutely right. What Paul said. It's you've got that they're hiding out in a warehouse, they're having chips, and the Doctor, as David Tennant, is telling them all about a bit of the history of Gallifrey. And it's for us oldies, it's exciting to hear that because it's a reference back to the original series, and for anybody new, it's new information. And then you see them actually cut to that with that Time Lord standing on the hill with his cloak flowing and the capital in the background.
Special moment.
It's fun, absolutely. But now when you hear it, I still like it. Yeah. But it doesn't have the same evocative feel anymore because it has been mucked around. It's been destroyed probably about 36 times in the last 10 years and then brought back. It's, you know, that Time Lord standing there with his cloak billowing now is going to be some silly, stupid Cyberman with a head thing and a cloak.
I don't want to get into too much of that because I want to talk about the music, not the show or anything like that. So just the music.
It's just that memory, that feeling. Now, for me, when I hear that music, it evokes that story, that Tennant story, rather than thoughts of Gallifrey itself.
But has it been overused? Because it's been in all the concerts since 2007. Has it been overused? Are people still loving it as much now, or has the varnish worn off a little bit?
It's a quieter, more soothing melody, isn't it? I mean, you've got the guitar and everything, and that's why we liked it. It's a beautiful piece of music, but it's a quieter one. Always was. It was like set in a nostalgic golden days context to Gallifrey, and I think I agree with you, JT. I when I saw the track list and when I started listening to, because listening to the concert for this program, for example, I was thinking, I've heard all these before, and there's no new flourishes or anything. Or do we just give the fans exactly what they get from the show? Now, I've heard this, as many of them, so many times that I wasn't finding any kind of messaging about how they've messed with Gallifrey or anything. I just thought, well, I've heard this a lot, and because it doesn't have a lot of the big flourishes and brass and everything, that it's just a quiet piece of music that gives you context, and I've heard it a lot, but it doesn't add any more out. It's one of those.
Mm-hmm. Bedri, what did you think about This Is Gallifrey as performed? I mean, you've obviously heard it a few times as well by now. Was this a surprise for you that this was included?
It was a little bit. I wondered if there was some variation to it, sort of the Day of the Doctor kind of, I think themes from This Is Gallifrey, I think, were reused again for Day of the Doctor and expanded on. And given the conversation that Moffat had just had with Joe Wiley, that kind of made sense to me. So I don't know whether it had planted that idea in my head, that it was a bit more Day of the Doctor version of it. Which, if that was the case, that was the soundtrack to my 2013. That was the music that was everywhere. Yeah. But it's a nice piece of music. There were other bits that I preferred. It didn't stand out enough to me within the entire concert.
I mean, when it was first broadcast as part of those episodes in 2007, it was a love letter to Gallifrey. It was a kiss goodbye. And that's how we all took it, really. Or, and when you watch them back now, you can see what they were trying to do. It was a kiss goodbye to say that's what it was, but they've gone. And that's why I think it's so beautiful and swept. And, it's just, as I say, the grandeur of the piece is amazing. It just struck me that it was odd that here it was. And it struck me even more so about what followed it, because Brendan, you spoke there about the quietness of this, and then suddenly following this, you're getting an even, another quiet one in a sense, because you're then visiting Arcatan for this one now, the long song from the Rings of Arcatan. Now, I have to be honest, this episode, I just have little memory of this, because it just doesn't sit in my head at all. I do remember a sterling performance from Matt Smith. And I remember him being on some sort of space bike, very Return of the Jedi. That's it. That's all I remember. His performance stood out because I remember him crying and those tears seemed real. That's all I remember. This song, though, has been around. Again, it's been performed before. Was this, how did they, sorry, Brendan, go on. What were you going to say, Brendan?
I was going to kind of answer where you're going there, because I think, if you go and see Tina Turner, go and see one of the stars, they have have a ballad section, have a quieter section, or
yes, you do in a concert. Yeah, you do.
And I just wondered, and Ian will be able to tell us because he experienced it, but whether we've had some very dramatic ones, and then we've had another interview with one of the show, and then we go to a slightly quieter, lovely section. But it's to sell a different vibe and then to build to the finish. I don't know, something like that. Because this one, it's not the program, it's not the story that I remember distinctly. I didn't, it wasn't one of those highlight ones, but.
It was Series 7, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
The long song itself, what surprised me listening to it this time, because I remember the girls singing to this monster and all this, but I forgot and didn't realise that beautiful Matt Smith regeneration music that actually is at the core of this, because you listen to a lot, and I could hear Matt Smith, saying we all play different people in our life, and Breath on the Mirror, and all that stuff. And actually, in the middle of that, the instrumental of that, I was thinking I could vividly see Matt Smith's Regeneration, and that's what got me. And that's when I thought, oh, I really do like this bit, because I found the music for Matt Smith's Regeneration, which is this, was beautiful.
Yeah. And this again, Ian, involved the BBC singers, didn't it? So did they come down on stage, or were they up in the rafters again?
No, they stayed up in the gallery all the time.
I suppose that's down to space, isn't it, really?
I think so. And it probably would have taken time, because the doors for them were up at the top as well. So there was no steps down. So they would have been out and down, probably through the street outside, and then back in through the front doors and up the stairs. So
exhausted before they would have even got to stage to perform this very, I mean, it's a very challenging, I would imagine, song for vocalists.
Yeah, I think it was the same lady that did Abigail's song. And
Rebecca Lee, yep.
Yeah, I think there was some male vocal in there as well. But again, did a very, very good job. But it's not, for myself as well, it's not one of the most vividly remembered of the Matt Smiths for me. Yeah, you sit there, you enjoy it, but it wasn't as say meaningful as listening to All the Strange Creatures or anything like that. It would, but they did very well, and again, excellent singing, excellent vocals, beautiful.
And it's really nice that that the BBC is involved with this through both the orchestra and the singers. It just shows you what wonderful performers they are, and to come to these things and to work. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. So that was the long game from the Rings of Akaten. Then we get on to the companions. Now this is where I was putting my point before. We could have taken some of the themes from the original runner here and popped them into here, because what we got a celebration of some of the new era. And I'm finding it difficult, Who viewers, to talk about that, because it's not new anymore. I mean, this thing's been going for nearly 20 years. You can't call it new in any way, shape or form. But we did get a mashup, as the kids say. Woo! We got a mashup of Rose, Martha, Donna and Amy. I thought this was very nicely done. Absolutely gorgeous mashup. This is where I really sort of started to feel the familiarity running through each one of these pieces, because they fitted together, considering that they're completely different characters. The music, when mashed up, flows absolutely beautifully. What do you guys think?
What I thought was interesting about the music was, for the companions, was the fact that apart from Donna, all the other companions had quite romantic sounding music, and Catherine Tate's got this wonderful comic tune.
Yeah, because of the Runaway Bride,
which is brilliant, which I love, and I really just that really made me laugh. I thought I'm looking forward to seeing it again in the specials. Fantastic. Yeah,
it'd be interesting to see, guys, if because we don't know where. At the point of recording, we don't know where Donna's going to be. We don't know where she's going to be in these specials. We know that somehow she manages to get her memory back. We know that. That's pretty obvious in the trailer. That music, you're right, Paul, it encapsulates the Donna we first meet in Runaway Bride. The very brash, I'm going to get you, very London
it's very comical, very slapsticky kind of comic music.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if that evolves.
Yeah.
And I would hope it would do, because, she evolved, the character evolved, and I hear that music now, and sometimes I think it doesn't suit where Donna was by the end of the time. She was a little bit calmer, she was so much more universally, I want to say worldly wise, but that's wrong. Universally wise, What was your opinion on this mashup, Brendan?
Well, yeah, because I was starting to think of the choices that had been made and the omissions that were made. I mean, for example, I found Clara and Face the Raven, that music I found very beautiful, and that wasn't there. That was a shame, because I thought, well, I didn't like Clara's character, but I loved the Face the Raven music. That was really good.
It was surprising that the Clara's theme wasn't in there. I wonder. I suppose that's just down to time.
Yeah, well, possibly. I mean, and I agree with you on the Donna Noble thing, because I actually think you've got the Runaway Bride, Donna Noble, and then you've got, I mean, the music when she, he took her memories away, and he said, but you're a great person, and he said some line to her, and you got a kind of 3 minutes of Murray Gold being very emotional, that kind of covered all her memories. And that was the music I liked for Donna Noble. I know there's the fun slapstick bit that Paul was talking about.
Yeah.
And that was Donna Noble at the beginning, and the brassy, mature bit. Listening to the Rose and Martha stuff, I agree again that you got this idea of this yearning, this angst, this emotional trauma. And it was nice to get back to that cocky, cheerful, really, Donna. And yeah, I suppose you can't win, but I agree with you, JT, that if they were going to do just touches, musical signs, why can't they get, in Tegan, this, that, and the other, and some other touches? It would have been nice.
Do you know what I'd like to hear when it comes to those themes as well? Because when you actually look at the episodes, you can actually associate, especially in the 80s, you can associate pieces of music to various companions. I would like to hear them mashed up between orchestra and radiophonic to see if that worked. I think it could be quite, I mean, if you think of something like Nissa's theme, that beautiful theme for Nissa, which actually, you hear that theme, you automatically think of Traken, you think of plants, you think of gardening, you think of stone statues coming to life. You do, and all those lovely outfits and peace and harmony and all that.
Velvet.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? It's all floaty,
yeah.
And it's beautiful. But imagine that as an orchestra, with those bits of radiophonic element into it as well. I love things like that. You get an awful lot of that in some music today, where you can mash the two and it works fantastically, and then that's big and bold as well. Yeah, I think it could have been in there. I mean, this must have gone down very well in the actual in the whole, Ian, because a lot of these are characters an awful lot of people in there surely have grown up with.
Absolutely. As soon as it started, the stuff with Rose, there was that little gasp again. But when it got through to Donna, people chuckled. I think it evoked nice memories. So there was, and I found myself doing it as well, because you just think of Catherine Tate. And when she was first in with Runaway Bride, and you saw it, just that little bit at the end in Doomsday, and I thought, is that Catherine Tate? Oh my God, what's Catherine Tate doing in Doctor Who? I thought she'd be terrible, and she wasn't. And then when I heard that she was coming back for Series 4, I was over the moon, and I thought she was fantastic. And you're right, because you say, that character developed, didn't it? All the way through, she developed, and right at the very end, Wilf, I think he said she was better now.
She was better with the Doctor.
But of course, he had to take a memory. So in a sense, she was almost had the reset switch hit, didn't she? Because she was returned almost to back to what she was. When he took the memory, she was on the phone gassing with a friend, and just a hi bye when he left, and that was it. But yeah,
very sad tale.
Yeah, very, very, and we don't know where she's going to pick up and get back a little bit to where she was.
I'd like to think that next time they play Donna's theme, it will be extended slightly. So you've got all that. We can't. I nearly sang it, and you're not allowed. But you've got all that sort of campery and all that sort of clashing, if you like. I hope he's given us something which is a bit, in a sense, sad, romantic but sad. Because when you look at her arc, it is a sad tale, but it is also romantic. She lived a life she can never remember. There's something very beautiful about that. And now it's about to hit her in the face big time, and put her life at stake, and all this sort of stuff. It would be lovely to see how the theme can hopefully progress in the 3 episodes as well, to be able to say Donna is, she's not quite. She's many elements. She's many characters in a sense. You know what I mean by that with the music? That can be played through, not just through performance, but through a beautiful orchestration as well. Brendan, I'm going to say to Bedweir, what was your favourite out of the mashup? Or did you love them all?
No, I think consistent with what everyone's said, really, the Donna bit stands out because it's just a bit more fun. And for me, it made me think of Partners in Crime and her, chasing little adipose fat balls around, and
there's one behind Paul. Look.
And that fun element. Whereas, as Paul said to start with, the other companions are more of a romantic kind of sound, and their themes are very based on the romance element, particularly Rose and Martha. So. Yeah, Donna is just the more fun, energetic one, and although I particularly liked how the pieces work together. And I think a few more medleys of that nature might have worked well.
Yeah, I can only think, guys, that at this point they're all thinking about time and getting it into this, because there's so much over 60 years worth of music, nearly. Let's face it, it's not really 60, but there's so much over that period that they can actually put into this. Including the Paul McGann TV movie with those lovely themes around the Eighth Doctor and Grace, for example, that have never actually been presented. I'm hoping one day that they're able to do something which would be a little bit different, but incorporate all of this and maybe put a spin on stuff. But that's just something, I was always
10 seconds of the whistling of the Adric theme to add to it.
Again, that lovely theme though, with that beautiful piping, would work on an orchestration. That'd be quite dramatic, really, because again, that theme, decades before Donna, it's actually very sad. From the moment you see him, when you look at it now, you can always state that the music's saying he's doomed. Anyway, so from that bit there, where you've got at this point, I'm thinking this is cozy. This is really cozy here. This is doing something psychological. This whole playlist has been put together to remind us of various elements of Doctor Who that have been there right up until a certain point. This is bringing back those elements of being able to say, this is familiar, this is powerful, this is cozy, this is gentle, this is calming. And then it carries on with that, with this one, Doomsday. Again, it's been played to death. Yeah. I'm not one of these people that get emotional over this, because by this point, of course, I have to be honest, I was ready for Rose to go. In her second season, she was starting to grate on me a little bit. I don't know. I was ready for it to go. I thought it was wonderfully how it went, but I'm also, like some of you here, old hand. I'm ready for when a companion leaves. I don't get that emotional over it, because I know that the next week there's going to be another one, and then I have to get used to it all again. But this piece of music, for me, I think it's lost the impact of it a bit now, because the moment where it starts with the tinkling on the piano, am I making sense? It's just.
I know what you mean, and if it's overused, it takes the emotion away. But it's a beautiful piece of music, don't you think?
Totally, yeah.
And I think classic fans, us guys here, often complain about Murray Gould being too emotional and trying to draw out the emotion from the scene rather than coming from the acting. And I think actually this piece works so well. It is very moving. Whether you like Rose or not at that point in the series, I think it still really, really gets you really upset. It's a very emotional moment. It tends to, what New Who tends to do is it drags out emotion a little bit too long sometimes. But I think that piece of music is beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, it was totally required to say goodbye to not just Rose, but to Billy.
Yeah,
this was totally suitable. I personally felt at the time thinking, this is gorgeous. Can't wait to get this on CD. That's all I think about, guys. Being the merchandise freak I am, thinking, when can I get this? When can I get it? So what about the rest of you? What did you make of Doomsday this time round?
I could have done without it.
Okay, that's just interesting.
Nice to hear it. It was nice to hear it, and again, it was well played. I would have liked to have heard the suite. I find it quite haunting, the suite from the Satan Pit.
Oh,
that's
yes.
I love that, and it never ever gets the kind of
you're right.
courage that Doomsday does. And yeah, Doomsday
it's never been played live, has it? That whole suite, it's never been there.
No, I don't think so. No. And I think it's a fantastic suite from an incredible 2 episodes. I think there's so much in those 2 episodes. They're amazing, absolutely fantastic stuff, and it just never features, and I don't know why. I think it's beautiful. I mean, yeah.
So you would rather have had that rather than Doomsday?
Yeah, 100%. And not obviously complaining. Being there, hearing it played live, fantastic. But if I'd had a choice, a tick box, what would you like to hear? I'd have done Satan Pit and not Doomsday. Definitely.
Wow. Yeah. You're going to say something, Brendan?
No, I was just adding to what Ian was saying. It's a good choice, that, actually, because it's that bit when you see her floating in space when she's dancing. I can't remember her character, but it's you've got a French horn, you've got this kind of Celtic Gaelic quality. It's beautiful, and I can't see why they couldn't have done that orchestrally at all. But no, that's a good choice, that as because Doomsday is just, like we said at the beginning, it's the greatest hits, but some of them, quite a long time ago now. It's 16 years ago. We're going quite a way back there. And, you know, lovely touches and some subtle touches that you could have used from... I liked not the lively music from Boomtown. I actually like the music when you've got the Slitheen on the bog. And he's it's really sad. And this little French horn again. I like.
Oh yeah, that lovely sort of again sad in a sense as well. But no, you're right there. Yeah, because you know, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I think it's possible. You know, the fact that using Doomsday is because it is that big thing and it's that familiar thing, isn't it? And I don't know, but do you think that they were putting things together here based on time? Because we've heard all this stuff before. They could basically just take the sheet music because they've played it so many times before. They can rehearse it over a couple of weeks and get it or whatever, get it ready. Do you think it was just off the shelf here because of time or something?
No, I don't think they could have done this concert and not done Doomsday.
Right.
To be honest, I mean, there was that vote in SFX magazine or whatever it was, or Radio Times possibly, that had the departure of Rose the most memorable moment of sci-fi ever, or you know, whatever it was.
Yeah,
madness. But I would say in its favor, though, for me, the power of this particular piece of music is that scene where Rose has gone and Tennant is just walking away from the wall in this empty room. And, you know, I think it must have been Doctor Who Confidential where we saw the rushes of them actually filming. And it's, you know, Tennant is acting as much as he can, but he's just walking through an empty room. And it's the music that lifts that.
Mm.
Then it goes a bit too far with the whole goodbye stuff and all that, which is kind of where it loses me. But the emotion of that particular walk is carried by the music. So I think, again, because that whole sequence of losing Rose, you know, and the goodbye on the beach, I think they have to do this. As you know, we've mentioned it is the greatest hits, and this is possibly the greatest of those hits.
Oh, well, that
general audience.
Right. I was going to say that's
order, isn't it? It's like you've got the companion suite, then the goodbye to the main companion of this new Who era, and then we're going to jump to Valet Deckham.
We are, because I was going to tie that in with what Bedouin is saying here. You know, you were just saying that this could be the greatest one for all of them, but you know, is it? Because Valet Deckham, it's come along now as well. I mean, this is for a lot of people. I mean, Paul mentioned at the top of the show the music to Logopolis. I'm with Paul on that. That brings back an absolute sort of incredible memory of losing Tom and gaining Peter, and having that utter confusion at that time when you're a 10 or 11-year-old. First time you would have seen a regeneration in living memory as well, in your own memory, because you would have been around for John's, but vague memories on that one. And then suddenly you've got this one coming along. I mean, the whole generation with this was completely moved by this. Not just that, but the general public as well, because this show got huge ratings. People wanted to see David Tennant go in a nice way. They wanted to see how he finished up. And this music, I mean, at this point as well, again, I'm thinking, right, okay, this is really playing it safe because we've heard this over and over again. Is it still bringing out the tears?
No. Right, and I'll tell you why. I think you mentioned this, you know, JT, we're talking about Doomsday earlier. When you've heard it too many times, it loses that emotional effect.
Oof, yeah.
When you are working at the Doctor Who experience and this regeneration sequence is on a loop, and you spend 2 years of your working life hearing it over and over again, first time I saw it, tears. Not gonna lie.
And now you want to kill people, though.
By this point,
it's dangerous now.
It's a beautiful piece and it's wonderful, and it builds to that crescendo, and he delivers the line, and I can't stand it now.
Oh, that is a shame. I can totally understand that, because we've heard stories of people working at the Blackpool and Longley exhibitions back in the day who cannot stand the music from Logopolis or the Caves of Androzani because they were hearing the effects and the music over and over and over for an entire shift, 5 days a week. So I get that as well. I mean, I remember when this was originally played at the Albert Hall on one of those fantastic concerts they used to do back in the day. And this, you can actually see it in the reactions when you watch it on the Blu-rays and the DVDs as well. You know, the audience are like, was that happening, Ian, at this particular gig?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, I am stunned and shocked.
Yeah, it remains a popular piece of music. I can understand, Bedweer, what you're saying about that. I think I would probably be reaching for a weapon if I'd heard that so many times.
A staser,
You know,
just to make it clear, a staser.
yes, naturally, a staser or a strategically placed plunger, I would probably reach for. But it's yeah. I mean, I still love this piece of music, but I've not been exposed to it for 2 years straight. I love it, and it gave me chills. I think I compared it to the memories of Logopolis, you know, and it does, out of all the new series or the 21st century series, if you like, regeneration music. It's the piece for me. I like
It's
it.
the one that I think we all remember. I can't remember any of the others. Put it that way.
No. No.
That one's the one that stands out, just simply because it was that whole last 20 minutes, if you like, of that episode was based around regeneration, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's become I often joke about this, but it has come a tradition now that the guy just won't die. He goes on a bloody world tour, you know, and you know, goes around the universe and spends hours and hours and hours, you know, just trying to die.
But regeneration has become like man flu now, hasn't it?
Oh, it's ridiculous now, isn't it? Just get on the floor and die and get off. But no, you have to have these big speeches and you have to have this crescendo. I mean, that music is very, very powerful. I think Ian's highlighting the fact that, you know, wait?
They don't even end up on the floor anymore.
No, they don't anymore.
To stand up and
somebody hit him with a saucepan and see what happens. I mean, if an exercise bike can get him, well, anyway. So I mean, but it is the standout one, and more importantly, I think if anybody from the public was listening to this, they would get that and they would understand that. I'll give the example of my mum, bless her, huge Tennant fan in Doctor Who. Can't wait for the new episodes because she's coming back because it's Tennant. Let's face it, that's all. But when this came on, she heard that and she went, "Oh, but he didn't go, did he?" And I thought, oh, she remembers.
I mean, in terms of viewing figures, it's got to be the most watched regeneration ever. Yeah. So again, we're trying to pull back in that general audience again, and stuff like this is going to bring back those. Oh God, I remember watching this on New Year's Day in 2010. You know,
well, I loved it. I loved it in Day of the Doctor when they brought that line back, and then Matt Smith says he always says that. It's a great.
Yeah, every 10 years he's going to say that. Because it'll be there in 10 years' time. It'll be there in 20 years' time. Honestly, it's every 10 years. This is now a tradition, everybody. This is going to be the same.
We'll be saying it in 2 weeks' time as well, no doubt.
Doctor, haven't they? Poor David Tennant. He's going to have to whinge every time he has to die. It's a shame, really. But I think Ian. I've made the same notes as what you've just said, because I actually think if you think of original Who, the drama of losing Tom Baker, the nation felt, and that music really echoes that, and that's why we all feel it still now. It's very resonant.
Yes.
And I think the Valet Decum, David Tennant was the Doctor of the New Who, wasn't he?
Yes.
He was. Yeah. And the nation really, really fell for him. And I think Logopolis and the Valet Decum comparison, Ian, is spot on, because I think we all know that the BBC were panicking a bit after losing David Tennant. This is Armageddon for them. He's a ratings machine, and their music almost says we don't want to go. I mean, the music just keeps going. You know, we'll have another. I mean, it builds to an enormous, massive climax because it just builds and builds and builds. Because just like his dialogue, it doesn't want to stop the music, and so there's an element of the nation going, we don't want David Tennant to go.
Absolutely.
Poor Baker got a shorter one, but it is so resonant, and our whole generation of fans really feel it. But I think that comparison, Ian, is spot on, because I felt that too.
Well, back in the day, though, of course, we didn't spend a whole 20 minutes waiting for the guy to die just to try and keep people interested. You know, it was just a case of, right, oh, he's fallen from that, bang, off he goes. No, no, it was just like, right, see ya, cheers, thanks for 7 years.
Part 4 of Caves of Androzani is just him, you know, holding it off until he can get Perry safe.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's ever picked up by the public, though. We get it as fans, but I'm not sure if the public will. Yeah, because it's very subtly done by the wonderful writing. But it is very interesting. And at the time, Brendan, this was very well deserved. This whole sort of, I'm not sure about the whole send-off thing, but certainly the score at this point was well deserved, because he'd done an awful lot, Tennant, for the show at this point. People knew him. I mean, it was everywhere, wasn't it? His image was everywhere as well. This was a wonderful piece of music that everybody, not just fans but the public, actually bought into, to say, right, this Doctor's going now. And you know, in hindsight, you can see that impact as well. You can see he's actually going at the right time, in a sense as well, because his legacy lives on to the fact, here he is again.
It's almost become, well, it was used as the regeneration music, because at one of the Proms concerts, they had every regeneration to this music, didn't they?
Yeah.
And all the fans were clapping each one as each Doctor was seen.
As we do.
Yeah. But this almost became the regeneration music. It was so powerful.
Yeah, and also because it was resonant, as we're saying here, incredibly powerful. But you know, everybody recognizes it today. I would say, you know, I mean, I was so impressed that my mother turned around and said, "I," but he didn't go. You know, that line hit her, and I said, "No, yeah, you're right, Mum. He's back every 10 years. It's the law." Yeah, so that's it. Let's see what happens in 10 years' time, everybody. But you know, yeah, I mean, again,
it was. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Ian. Go ahead.
I suppose it was like the BBC's equivalent of a state funeral, wasn't it? Because he had taken it to the top level.
Well, he was on the indents as well that Christmas.
Yeah,
Remember, he was flying around with the TARDIS and the reindeer. It was that big a deal.
Did that episode get the highest BBC ratings for the year? It got pretty much top spot, didn't it?
It was definitely in the top 3. I'm not sure if it got the top. I think there might. I think somebody else might have topped it. I don't know if it. I don't know. It was certainly very high. It was very high.
But it was certainly, because I mean, for us, it wasn't just Tennant, was it? It was the end of Russell T Davies as well. He was gone.
Well, that's it. That's it.
And it was the end of
time.
Yeah, well,
but also the whole point at this point, when this is playing and you're reliving those images of you know, Tennant leaving and Smith coming in and all that sort of stuff, incredibly powerful images, and a very powerful regeneration as well. The music matched it. It was so well deserved, as I was saying before. It was a great send off for Tennant. But at this point, I'm listening to this concert, actually thinking, you know, this is really building up to this whole point of showing a time when fandom was proud of the show, because it wasn't just our show, it was the public show as well. They were tuning in every single week. Between 7 and 9 million were joining into the Doctor's adventures over this huge era for the show, with this very popular Doctor, not just with fans but with the British public, who had just taken him to his heart and recognized Doctor Who, although the furniture had been moved around a little bit. This was Doctor Who still. And so these crescendos that were given here, this is when I was thinking, I remember when I was, you know, people could, oh, you're a Doctor Who fan. Oh, it's great. And, you know, it doesn't happen so much now. We're back to where it used to be, in a sense where you just, yeah, I'm a Doctor. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I've got a Doctor Who channel. Yeah. You know, do you know what I'm saying? But these incredible scores reminded me of that time.
But it's very RTD centric, I have to say. If you listed all 16 tracks, how many of them are RTD centric? So we're only talking about the first 4 years of an 18-year series that came, since it came back. And so when we talked about the companions, Martha, Rose, who else did we have? I mean,
we had Donna and we had Amy.
Yeah, so 3 of them out of 4, 3 of them were RTD. Yeah. Most of these, I mean, and so there's an element here where is he curating this? Is he saying, I'm back? The vibe that we had then is back. I mean, it was the peak of the New Who. So is this very deliberate that he's actually saying, no, we're going peak Doctor Who here? I want you to remember what you're just saying there, because we can bring that in again very soon. So remember that point, because I'll forget. So remember that point, because we can bring that in. We'll move on to the next piece they played now. Now, I actually think this is another incredible piece of music for Doctor Who, and one that I could listen to quite a while. And I love this particular piece because it's a spooky setup. It really is an eerie atmosphere that this music actually manages to create. It's unsettling. It's mysterious. It builds up to an incredibly solid, powerful, full-on, heroic piece, which I think sums up the 12th Doctor. This is the good man. And when this was broadcast, I remember instantly liking this theme. I absolutely like. It's just that whole spooky beginning.
and I've loved it ever since. So to hear it, this was the first time it's been played in a concert. This bowled me over. I was not expecting this at all. And I'm absolutely delighted it was there. Do you guys know what I mean when I'm saying about this? This was really unsettling because this version of the Doctor at that point was as well.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like the cello from Twin Dilemma. Sorry, no, it's that it's that one. It's when you got that touch of unsettling. I'm going to do an Ian here, Ian. I'm just being cheeky. I'm making a link. The first Colin Baker story had a bit of unsettling music, but I totally get what you're saying, JT. Yeah, this is another lovely piece of music, and I'm glad they used it actually.
Oh yeah,
and yes, you see, because Capaldi was sold a bit like a Colin Baker anyway, wasn't he? At the beginning, maybe wrecked what came later on because fans turn off not fans, but general viewers turn off quite fast if they don't like what they see early doors.
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, but this music is picking up on that kind of, like you said, the spooky quality of, and you know, who is he and is he a good, decent bloke? But yeah, it probably set a dud up for him for a while, sadly.
Yeah.
Mm.
I would blame the scripts more than the music. I just think this music is stunning. I just love the way it's sort of. It actually, for me, it nails the Doctor in any of his incarnations because we shouldn't know who the Doctor is, and there should be that element, in my opinion, of him being a little bit. Hang on, should I really be traveling with you? Perry always felt that. Going back to your Sixth Doctor period, Perry always got that. Should I really be with you? You're quite dangerous.
The 12th Doctor didn't strangle Clara. He may have wanted to, but he never did.
I think he might have got close occasionally. He went for a coffee instead, you know, all that silliness. But there he is. I mean, when you remember that, when you feel about it, you're entering his world here, and it just suits that particular, not just the story, Deep Breath, but his incarnation. You know, that whole thing. Ian, this was the first time this was played in public at the concert here. What was the reaction to the audience?
I think it was a positive reaction. People clearly enjoyed it. It got a rousing round of applause at the match. Most of the music that they played got a good round of applause. But from, you know, if you're on the front row, you're not in the middle of the crowd, so everything's sort of like going on behind you. But you get that, you pick up on that buzz, you know. And I think Capaldi's whole era, if you look at it across, this is the piece of music that stands out for me. That I enjoy it. It does start quite haunting, and that tinkly build up, and then it really is quite a powerful piece. And you can see, I knew Julie Gardner enjoyed it because her foot was tapping like 10 to the dozen, and there was.
It might have been new to her because this is out of her era.
Absolutely, but my friend was to my right, and then to the right of her there was this guy who was. I said I can't play an instrument to save my life, but she can, and she's played in a few small music groups and things. But she said there's something that would really put me off if I was in that orchestra, was that this guy was sat there and he was doing this all the time. And he said if I was in the orchestra and I saw somebody sat in front of me like that was doing that would really put me off. But during this 12th Doctor piece, he was almost standing up. He was going for it. So it really got to him.
So was this a fan getting carried away?
Yes, very much so.
Oh, bless. Sit down.
He got told a couple of times. He got warned he'd get thrown out, and that was before.
Oh no, that's so sad.
He got
like the Adele concert. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no, that's so sad. That's so sad. I mean, it's a standout track. Again, I was so surprised to see it in coming up in the set list, but delighted to hear it. And it's very difficult. It's very different when you hear it rather without the visuals. You know, and it's just on the radio, because this is a piece that out with the show I've never heard, and that leads me on to the next piece, which I've never heard at all. This was all this time. This is brand new piece of music for me. I have never heard this because I have never watched Peter Capaldi's last episode, because I know what happens at the end. So I've never watched it. And this was something called "I Am a Good Man," which suggested to me that this rounded off that whole question that he had at the beginning of his time. Am I a good man? Am I a good man? Which I'd never understood. Why would you be saying this? I found this one reminiscent of The Good Man, and also the Tenant Regeneration piece as well. The stings were traditional, and it seemed to have more in style with older Doctor Who, if that's making any sense from my first impression.
Well, this music, I preferred this track out of the two. I mean, they're all lovely, but this one, because it was resonant of that episode. You see, JT, because I can see him in the crater in World War One, giving the thumbs up almost an acknowledgement to Lethbridge Stewart. I can see that happening, a lovely little touch.
He was in it again, was he?
I can see all these lovely little touches at the end, and I can see the first Doctor going into his TARDIS and regenerating, because I loved the fact that this music was used to almost kind of fire up and give more energy to the first Doctor's regeneration, the long way round.
Oh, I see.
And I love this because the lovely thing about the Moffat era is he did all these extra little regenerations for us. And one thing he did here is he charged up the first Doctor's regeneration, give it a bit more energy with the music, and give it a lovely touch, because the first Doctor was going through the same concerns as this Doctor. And so basically they agreed on this dialogue, the long way around, let's do it. And
so I take it this was all for this particular episode, because I don't remember the first Doctor having these concerns about regenerating in the Tenth Planet at all.
It's all part of thought. Can I say something, Brendan? I have to say I'm really pleased you're enthused about Twice Upon a Time. And it must just be me and you who like it, because every fan I hear hates Twice Upon a Time, but I loved it.
Well, the only thing I didn't like, Paul, was the deconstruction of the William Hartnell Doctor and making him a bit sexist. That's all. But this music, I love that touch when he goes back into the TARDIS, now reconstructed, and he regenerates quite willingly. And then we moved on to obviously Capaldi. And so I just thought it was a lovely touch. It tied up all the original Doctors. And it gave us, because JT, they used this music to actually watch the first regeneration again. You saw it again.
Oh, that's just offended my fan heart. Well, this music, though, because as I say,
it's really lovely, JT. Honestly, you'd like it.
Yeah, whatever. So what I'm looking at here, with this being a piece of music that was new to me, I didn't know where it was from. I knew it was going to be from that final Capaldi episode, which was the Christmas episode that was put together. We are led to believe very, very quickly. So that they could get it out at Christmas. Was this throughout the episode, this particular piece? Was it a recurring theme, or was it just towards the usual 30 minutes? Oh yeah, we've got to give him a big speech type thing.
It seemed, I thought it was near the end. I think that if we're talking about music and Capaldi, I think that, like I said, with Face the Raven and Clara, with this one, Capaldi, poor soul, he had the Mondasian Cybermen, he had the big battle with them in a previous story, as you know, which was supposed to be his regeneration, and the music there was melancholic. You know, there's supposed to be stars, and it was so touching, and I thought that was a beautiful, delicate piece of music, whereas this obviously hits more the bombastic element again. And so again, I love what was played, but I also loved the original Capaldi regeneration intention, which was this: they ought to be stars. And it was a really sad, heroic death, but very. And
he was on the floor.
Yeah, outside.
I mean, come on. I mean, but for me, as I say, interesting piece of music. It was familiar. As I say, I think it was a mashup of things that had gone before. It wasn't that special. It's certainly nothing. It's not a patch for me on A Good Man, but it's interesting that it's trying to take up the themes that were set by that. So I would suggest from the music I suggested. From the music, I get the feeling that the 12th Doctor decided he was a good man at the end of the day, and that's all from what I get from the music. Interesting, just a brand new piece for me. It was nice to hear it. That leads us on to a whole brand new section for me, because I haven't heard any of this particular music at all. So at this point, Ian, Chris Chibnall and Sagan Akinola arrive on stage. So they're talking about again on this. I got the feeling this was a very rehearsed and a very measured speech. How was it for you actually live there?
You had steam coming out of your ears, Ian.
I did make a joke that I thought he was very brave turning up, and he did turn up in brown trousers. And if you see the photos, he was wearing brown trousers. And
I've never looked, actually.
Certainly covered up any fear. But I don't recall him saying anything specific about Doctor Who at all. Obviously, she who shall not be named got mentioned, but I remember Sagan Akinola saying about how he was afraid, very fearful, very nervous about.
Yes, he used the word terror, didn't he? Which is a very powerful word to use. Terror.
And, I hadn't realised he was there at first because he wasn't in the front row. He was sat, I think, just a row behind. As opposed to Murray Gold, who was right up at the back in the left, in the middle of everybody.
Can I ask on that point though? Would you have recognised Sagan Akinola anyway? Because Murray Gold is sort of now he is now in the whole canon, isn't he, of Doctor Who behind the scenes. We all know him. We would recognise him if any of us saw him. We go, oh, that's Murray Gold,
and
because he's had that impact. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Oh, well, he has, yes, and he's had that impact, but. Arguably, Sagan Akinola didn't have that impact. So would you have recognised him if he was sitting next to you?
During the interval, all of them got up and went out, except for him. He got out, walked. They all walked out, exit stage left, if you like, and he was still, because he wasn't sat on the front row. He was wandering around a bit, and he went and he came across in front, and. It was just one of those things. We made eye contact, and he sort of like, hi, and I just, hello back. I hadn't a clue. I couldn't have told you who he was. I had no idea until he came up and spoke. I was like, oh, of course, but
of course that's the composer.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, when there's an interval and people are wandering around and everything, and one of these people, if that had been, Sylvester McCoy, say, who did come out from the interval early. And was chatting to a few people, as is Sylvester, nobody bothered him, nobody stopped him, nobody said, oh, are you, can I, and all this. That he was just wandering around freely. I don't think anybody really cottoned who he was. Nothing against him as a person, but
well, no, it just shows you what happened during that era, because I don't think anybody knows who anybody was.
But when they were talking, purely for badness, you sit forward and you're looking like this, and it looks like you're watching Chibbers and him doing their talky bit. But I was actually watching Russell T Davies, because obviously there was Julie Gardner, an empty chair, because Chibnall's up there, then Russell T Davies. And I was just watching his face whilst Chibnall was talking, because you hear these rumours, don't you, that he hated the entire era with what happened. Yeah. And you hear rumours that he's going to retcon it, which would be just amazing. And
all rumours.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was watching, and all the time that Chris Chibnall was talking, he made some joke at one point, and he did a polite kind of thing. But apart from that, his face was like stone. He was just straightforward. Do you know what? Didn't crack at all. And he's normally very animated, but it was almost like, yeah, he's talking, I'm just switching off.
He did mention that he had a suit of armour.
He needed it.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, he felt like he needed a suit of armour. I'm taking him out of context now, but something like that. So it did show to me that, because how this came through, that it was actually quite rehearsed in a sense. They are aware of everything that's gone on. They are aware that, I mean, they may not be acting on this. They may not want to acknowledge it, but they are aware. I mean, they are all lovies, so they don't do any wrong, do they? And you don't criticize your fellow professionals. But moving on to the music of this sort of stuff as well. I mean, as I say, for me, this was all brand new. What was played was the Doctor's theme, Spyful, and Power of the Doctor as a suite. My initial reaction to this was, this is really boring. I can actually understand why the fans didn't like this, because if this was running through however many episodes they produced each year, I didn't get any sense of atmosphere. Now, I do appreciate the work that's gone into the composing of this music at all, but it's not Doctor Who. This deserves to be in some sort of horror film or a different genre completely. It didn't smack me at all of anything to do with Doctor Who, ever.
As I said at the start, JT, when we talked about Murray Gold coming back, I think that it's hard act to follow, I think, because he's so prominent, so pronounced, so evocative. I think it's very hard for someone to follow.
And big.
Yeah, big, yeah.
Big.
So And
And then Sagan comes along and he's told
Yeah.
to change things around, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think his music is a bit bland, but his version of the theme isn't too bad, I have to say.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. The first time I listened to Sagan's version of the Doctor Who theme was when Paul mentioned it. I had not heard it at all. I don't mind it. I love the fact that the radiophonic elements are in it, because that to me screams Doctor Who, which some of the newer versions don't have. So I was actually thinking, that's okay. I've heard about the titles. I watched those later, didn't I, Paul? I listened to it first, and then I went and thought, what are these titles about? So it sort of takes the emphasis away from the music when you're looking at the title. But as somebody brand new to the world of this version of Doctor Who with this music, it had no impact on me whatsoever, and I can't remember it. But Dwyer, you watch bits and pieces of this era. Can you remember any of this music?
I couldn't remember specific sequences, but in the context of the concert as a whole, I really enjoyed it. So between this section, this suite, and the classic series montage, everything else for me is very samey. It's very Murray Gold. It's very good, but it's all similar themes, similar tones, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So out of 16 tracks, there were only 2 that stood out for being different.
Okay, that's an interesting point.
Yeah, and I get that it's a bit bland. It's not. It's more generic incidental music, I have to say. That you and Doctor Who's always been a level above that for me, in terms of creativity and exploring different things and being post 2005 a lot heavier on emotion. But I enjoyed it within the 2 hour, hour 45-minute concert, because it was a different sound. It was a different tone from what I heard everywhere else.
I mean, it was like a break between all this big stuff, and here comes a different. I mean, it is a completely different sound. I get what you're saying there. Yeah. It's completely different, but I can't imagine what's. As I say, for me, it just doesn't smack Doctor Who. But I can't imagine where necessarily I would see it in a film or something. I would have to be something really arty, I guess.
It's very ambient. I mean, I think this is. I started, and I think you've picked up on it about. Is it incidental music, or is it a full-on movie-type soundtrack? And I think there has been a tonal change under Chibbers, and this is what's happened. I have to say, and I have my opinions on this era, and I did watch it all, but I had an awful lot of empathy for Sagan up there, because I have to say, I was making the point that it was a very RTD-centric night, and it's a very Murray Gold-centric night, and be sandwiched in the middle of that, it's quite challenging. I mean, he did the job he was asked to do.
Yeah.
I didn't find the music very memorable, but as Bedouin said, listening to it at the concert, I actually thought, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I mean, they didn't pick some music from the Ghost Monument. I actually like the music a bit in there. There are some touches. It's very different, but it's much more in the background. And I don't think it was meant to dominate. It wasn't meant to really trigger too much. And so it's two very, like I said earlier, it's two very different beasts up against each other. And the poor lad, how the hell you've got Murray Gold at the beginning, in the centre, at the end, and you're sandwiched there. I thought, I'd be interested in what Ian said, that I thought Chris Chibnall sounded very low, lacking confidence almost. And again, sandwiched between two power beasts of showrunners. And successful ones to a degree. And then he sounded really quiet. Whether he's a quiet man, I don't know. But I felt the composer and that showrunner sounded very tentative and almost as if they weren't really placed in the right,
there's an interview with three of them together, isn't there, on YouTube with Russell, Stephen, and Chris.
Yeah,
and it seems a bit difficult, a bit awkward, I think. But,
a bit fast.
I haven't watched that. I've tried to watch it, but I got bored within seconds, so I switched it off.
But you can get a vibe from if you watch it, and see.
Well, it just didn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, it's not for me. Anyway, so that was that bit there with the Chibnall era covered in Well, it wasn't very long. It actually wasn't very long. Oh, actually, I've told a lie. Actually, there was one bit that's just come back to me now. It was something quite James Bondy, which was bizarre.
Spyfall, yeah.
Oh, was it the Spyfall? Oh, of course, yeah, Spyfall. Right, okay, so that would make sense. It was a James Bond thing. Okay,
I mean,
so then they started.
It's specially written it at Sega Nakinola. It'd written the compilation, if you like. So it was billed as a new piece of music, which featured elements of. But I think it was interesting that out of an era, if you want to call it that, that dragged on for 5 years, effectively from announcing her to leaving. It was interesting that period of Doctor Who was basically featured as just one compilation of just a few minutes.
Yeah.
It was, whereas the others had individual pieces, it was just this one piece that he'd written for it, and that was it. But it was. I mean, they got applause. It was polite. They got applause. But I think it was obvious that they didn't quite know what the welcome would be.
The big test will be to see where it fits in the future, because like it or not now, no matter what side of the fence you are on here, the Chibnall era is part of Doctor Who. It will be in all the history books moving forward. There will always be that chapter. There will always be that part in in special publications. It's going to be there. It'll be interesting to see moving forward now where. If they repeat these sort of things with concerts in the future, will it be acknowledged, or will they do a classic? Will they treat it like the classics? Oh yeah, you're getting 8 minutes. It'll be very interesting to see where it's going. But we did have an element of that future starting at this particular point here now, and this is where I think Ian, a lot of the audience would have been very surprised, because we suddenly got Catherine Rowe William, coming onto stage with The Life of Sunday, which of course is the brand new theme for the new companion, Ruby Sunday. Now this started for me, this threw me a little bit, because when this started, obviously we're all hearing this together for the first time. This is really quite a classical piece, especially at the very beginning. And I immediately thought of a ballerina for some bizarre reason. Is she a ballerina? I don't think so. But also, as it progressed, it also reminded me of things like The End of the World. So the whole vista that's performed here, to go back to Bedouin's point, this was very, end of Murray Gold again. It's very familiar. It's very cozy again, isn't it? It seems wistful, a bit sad. I don't know what you guys thought about this and what the reaction was as well. Ian, when they announced that they were going to play this particular track.
Oh, a huge amount of excitement. There was a real buzz, something new. They were going to get something new. There was, everybody like shifting in the seats, getting comfortable. Right, come on, hit us with it. It was exciting. Nobody expected it, and there was it was slightly later on when Russell T Davies spoke, but he said that it was. Her character plays the piano.
Oh, I see.
The first time that you hear the theme in the show is apparently when she's playing this theme on the piano. That was certainly the story they gave there. So it's definitely her piece of music. She is or at least can play the piano in the series. Whether that features heavily or not, I don't know.
Well, that brings a whole new element into what I'm saying there then, because maybe the character she's quite sad at this point, which would be very, very sad for a very young person, because she's only 18, I believe.
I have heard that she's, I don't recall it being mentioned at the concert, but I have heard it said that she's an adoptee and there's a search for parents thing. I don't know whether or not there's...
Yeah, because we've mentioned the element, haven't we?
Yeah, I don't know if we need a family thing.
It'll probably turn out to be somebody trying to take over the universe. That'll be a mum or a dad or something like that.
Should be Slovene. No, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what do we think about the piece? What do we think about the music?
I thought it sounded, do you know what, when the beginning especially, I know you said ballerina, I thought it sounded quite like Schindler's List. It sounded really sad and yeah, I mean, knowing tiny snippets of what her character context is, I got the impression, you're going to feel this is sad, delicate start. She's going to be put back together again by meeting the Doctor, something like that.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Paul? What was your first impression on this? Because it's very interesting, because it's brand new music for all of us.
Well, that's it. It's nice to hear. It doesn't. It's funny. I know it's Murray Gold, but I think it feels slightly different from his previous work for me a little bit.
Oh, did you get that?
Yeah,
What makes you say that?
it felt slightly different. I think I don't know if he's trying to be different or not, but it felt different from what we'd heard in the extracts earlier on in the concert. But I agree with what Brendan's saying. I think it's very melancholic music. It's very, very sad. And I think, as Ian was saying, if she's got a sad background, kind of backstory, that would obviously lead into that a little bit. But I think it's a really nice piece of music. Yeah, lovely.
Mm. Well, we'll just have to wait and see how it fits into the show. It's interesting that Russell gave us a little bit of an insight there, isn't it? Really, about what could be happening with her. At this point, we go back to the guests. And what happens is we get another guest coming on, and it happens to be Mr. Murray Gold. So Joe Wiley brings on Murray, and he talks about various things, doesn't he? Joe actually says that he has, quote unquote, he has been fully restored. That said an awful lot to me. Yeah. I mean, what's so fully restored? I thought, hang on a minute. There's a story here. I get that feeling that, you heard various rumours at the time about how Murray Gold was led to depart. We won't really go into it because it's the wrong format here. But I'm just thinking, ooh, fully restored. Interesting use of words.
Well, I think he did create a lot of music in the time he was there. So obviously he's got a very tiring and hard-working experience from him, don't you think?
Well, yeah. But I just get the feeling there's a story.
Yeah,
I do get this feeling. He is actually very, very funny as well in his dry sense.
Yeah.
Because when she said it's something along the lines of, where has this been? Where's this come from? He turned around and said Wagner.
Yeah.
And Joe must have went, oh my God, I walked into that one.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
God love her. But he was very nice, and he was very reserved though, wasn't he? At this point, it's as though he's got all the cards in his hand at this point, and he's letting them all know. I don't know. There was just something about the whole. I mean, what did Ian? You were there. What was his mannerism? What was he looking like? Was he? Tell us a bit more.
Very energetic, very lively. He's clearly happy to be back. He has a.
That didn't come through when he was talking, I must admit.
he's got a long history with Russell T Davies.
Yes, they have to go back to 1998, 99.
Yeah, and Russell T Davies mentioned about how they'd worked together on Queer.
That's right. I know the Red Productions. Yeah,
and I don't think there was ever going to be anybody else that Russell T Davies certainly wanted at the beginning. But there was this talk of he's back. I can't quite remember the words that he used to describe it, but the impression you got was he's not back permanently. So he's back for this year, possibly the year after that. But I think you get the impression that there's some plan there for succession.
Oh, I see.
But rather than as it was at the end of the Capaldi era, it was just like, right, hi, bye, thanks, off you go. And here's somebody else that's going to be doing it from now on. I think it'll be more of a structured handover. So it's a little bit more seamless. But he came across as very energetic, very fun, very bouncy, and
that's very interesting though, Ian, because from what you've just said there, those very words could actually portray what we know of the 15th Doctor at this particular point, this early in November 2023. Because what Murray Gold actually said was the soul projects out of his face. Because of course, what came next was the new theme. Each Doctor under the new regime has to have, of course, a theme, and the 15th Doctor is absolutely no different. And so what happened is they played the 15th Doctor's theme. And why was I reminded of the Benny Hill theme immediately?
Good old sax.
It just
it was really cheesy. I thought really cheesy. I didn't like that one at all. But it'll be chopped up into different sections probably. It won't be performed in the whole way. I would have thought.
Yeah.
I got a New York vibe. It felt very New Yorky. It had swagger. It was like a razzmatazz, pizzazz type theme. So whether he's, you're trying to guess his character, thinking he's a bit more swanky, a bit more international. I don't know. I just felt a bit New York. That's all I can say.
I never got the Shaft theme. I was hoping for that.
to go with his leather jacket.
Yeah.
I mean, as I say, the beginning of it for me is just scream Benny Hill. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be camp. But then it does go into this sort of lively, dangerous sort of energy coming through here. It does remind me very much of the Matt Smith version, the theme here as well. But there's this whole thing that comes in, isn't it, really, to say there's a rush coming in. It becomes bold. It becomes confident. And I've written down here, it's as though he's saying, I'm on the way through this music at this point, where we haven't seen him on screen yet, you know. And I have listened back to it since, but I still can't get Benny Hill out of my head.
It's very noticeably Doctor Who. I think halfway through it gets to that point, and it kicks in very, like you say, Matt Smith. The very start of it, you knew something was coming, because these two guys came to the front, and as I say, I can't play an instrument and can't recognize most instruments, but say saxophone, clarinet things, and what one of them was quite large, but the other one had to have its little stand that stood on the floor. It was so large. And these two guys, and then bang, it was into it. And yeah, I know what you mean about the Benny Hill thing. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that, definitely.
the Doctor on a milk float at the very beginning.
I will never, ever listen to it and not think that now.
It was just one of those things. Yeah, it was just that beginning. I thought, oh God, it's going to be there until I see the visuals.
I like it. I like the track. And when I heard it again on the Zoe Ball thing, which I heard just by chance, yeah, I like it. And I think it'll grow. I
hope so.
Yeah, it was a good piece, and it was very, very, very well received. Again, I think people just thought that they were going to be given that one piece of Ruby Sunday's theme, and I think they would have been happy with that. But as he hinted at, you know, you're getting this double, and then he said, well, actually triple, because at that point people didn't know that the new
this was Murray, wasn't it? Murray hinted at this,
was coming as well. But when they realised that we were going to hear this as well, I think some people were having to fan themselves. I don't think they could cope with the excitement, really.
I mean, it's wonderful that, I do actually find it appropriate that at this point where they're actually churning out an awful lot of material we've heard before, yes, a couple of things that we haven't as fans, they will be aware that as fans, we know this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think it's absolutely appropriate that in the 60th anniversary concert, they do have a nod towards the future. And to give us those elements there, yes, it's a little treat, but I think it's absolutely played perfectly well, because, you know, I've written on my notes here, I quite like this, and I'm actually looking forward to hearing it in context with visuals, with the character, with this beginning of this, you know, a version of the Doctor that Ncuti is busy creating, even to this very day as we're recording. They are filming series 2 right now, aren't they? So it was quite, but it was big, and it is familiar in that sense as well, because, you know, you just think, well, that's what we now know in modern Doctor Who as being the Doctor's vibe, if you like. It's bang, 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 bang. And as Russell actually said, because he comes on stage at this point, doesn't he, with Joe, and he says, we're coming back subtly than ever. Typical thing for him to say, but here he is coming on after the unveiling of the 15th Doctor's theme, and he's his usual showbiz exuberant. I want to know, does he ever have an off day? Is this what he's like all times? Is this just really showman down to the actual ground? Because he just, when you see him on everything, he's the same character, the same persona. It's just big. Gosh, I mean, the guy must be exhausted. You know,
he certainly has an energy to him. I don't know if you remember, around the time after series 1, there was a documentary on featuring him, and it showed him.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah,
home and things, and chain smoking, standing in the window waiting for his taxi to turn up to take him somewhere and everything. And he seemed quite. Sometimes, you know, and I think he wrote in that long book that was I can't remember the title of it.
The Writer's Tale.
Writer's Tale. Yeah.
How, you know, things did get to him, but his public persona is pretty much always like that. And the minute he stood up, massive round of applause. I mean, you know, and cheers. He got the cheers, definitely. And he spoke really well with Murray Gold there as well. You know, he recounted a little story of when they were working previously on Doctor Who, and he'd gone round to his house, and they cut this from Radio 2, but he'd gone round to his house to listen to the soundtrack for whatever series it was that he was doing, and Murray was like, ping, 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 doing one thing, doing another, saying something else. Do you want some toast? Do you want some toast? I'll put some toast in. Oh no, let's go for a pizza instead. So they went for a pizza, and while they were having a pizza, they saw 2 fire engines go by, and that's because the toast had set fire to his flat, and his flat burnt down entirely. He said we was just stood there looking at the ashes of his flat, because it apparently,
that's a scene that's going to appear in something in the future. I can guarantee you that is a dramatic scene.
And it was a really funny, sad in a sense, but funny little tale. And they cut it out obviously for time or whatever. But he just said, you know, all the time I'm thinking, yes, this is really, really, really sad. Where's the soundtrack?
Oh, really? Oh,
and of course it was safe because it was digital and it was backed up in.
He was interesting because he checked himself, didn't he? Because he said he almost made it sound as though he was back to save Doctor Who. Yes, and it was interesting. He said it, and then he tried to pull it back, and I think that was a nice, interesting reveal that he does feel as though. I know he said Doctor Who needs a safe pair of hands now. Now it's gone, you know, bigger and brasher, but he did seem to say, "I'm back to save the show."
Yeah,
I think everybody knows really that, you know, Doctor Who, whilst the Capaldi era had its wobbles, people still held it in fond regard, and then it
was recognisable Doctor Who. Whatever you say about the quality of the scripts, it was still Doctor Who, and Peter was Doctor Who. He was playing the Doctor. Because, amongst all the actors that have played the Doctor in modern times, Peter understood him the most because he was a fan. He's been there since the very early days. He's grown up with it. He was one of us. He actually created conventions and fan groups and all this sort of stuff. He wrote about it. He drew about it. He lived and breathed it. So yeah, I mean, that's why he was so good, and that's why people recognised the show. It was down to him.
Yeah,
the politics
I think he has been brought back, hasn't he, to recover it, because it was facing getting canned, wasn't it? And
it's interesting, Ian, that politically he said it with Chris Chibnall sat there, and that was the mask slipped. I think it was a mistake.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the case. As I said before, you're never going to find the lovies ever criticising each other, because they can't, because they may end up working with each other, and it is disrespectful. I've said this before, I will say it probably again. It would be great if somebody broke the mold eventually and came out and said what we all think and tried to agree with us rather than poo-pooing it or just denying it ever happened and denying this problem in fandom, which still exists to this very day, is not here, because it's making their job very difficult, because they've got to try and bring us back. You mentioned in there, well, we're talking about the 12th Doctor as well, which leads us beautifully onto the fact that, again, another bit of music that's never been played before was from the Peter Capaldi era. It's the Shepherd Boy, with that gorgeous guitar-led element to it. I mean, again, I wasn't ever expecting to hear this particular piece of music in a live gig.
That was good, though. I mean, it's nice. It is that we got something different. You know, we've spoken before, haven't we, about how so many of the popular ones that always seem to come out have come out, but they did sort of like come from left field on this one.
Well, you have to remember, it's 10 years since the last concert, isn't it?
Oh, yes, the 2015, the 2000, I don't know what year I'm in, the 50th anniversary one. That's right, yeah, that would have been the last big, and that was Albert Hall.
Yeah.
And it was very much in the format that had been established by the previous 3 or 4. You know, including the Children in Need one from all those elements years ago, you know. Whereas this one was a small one.
Clattering everywhere, wouldn't you? You'd get used to people, Daleks gliding around and Cybermen stomping everywhere and Jadoon and everything.
Well, they were a piece of theatre as well, weren't they? It was a proper concert, as you would expect to go to concerts now, because it had the theatrical element in mixed into the music, the story element there, the characters were in there. Whereas this one was just a pure. It probably would have suited Radio 4 more, to be quite honest, because it was purely a concert.
This is my favourite piece.
That's nice.
When we did, you know, the previous episode about the music, it was one on my list that we never quite got to. But this, to me, is just beautiful. I love the way Murray Gold always defaults to a waltz. because one of my other picks was Lady Cassandra's Waltz, and I know he would have picked that for the beginning, the second one, because I think they wanted at the beginning the Stranger Creatures, because they wanted to do it upbeat. But this one, it's to me, it's got the same quality as Ravel's Bolero. It builds and builds.
It does, yeah.
I thought it was a bit like that Pachelbel's canon as well. There's some lovely pieces that repeat and build. So it starts with the guitar. You get a lovely melody. You get the whole build up. It's almost like it's symphonic in the end. I just think this is a beautiful, poignant. I don't know. It's a nostalgic piece, and I just think it, because it's got that waltz element where it repeats and builds. I just love it. I play it all the time. It's just
wow. It's nice to hear that, because, you know, it's not one of those that I think fandom really grasped, like Doomsday, for example, or Validechem or anything like that. I don't think they really took it to heart. And yet, when you hear it in that environment, Brendan, it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. It's up there with the Catherine Jenkins ones to me, because this is when it's you know, there's some fantastic Doctor Who music, and we can all continue to do loads of episodes about this. But I think there's some that are very classical. And I thought this one, like the Catherine Jenkins one, they're almost like a masterpiece, I have to say.
Absolutely. And it was lovely to hear it. And again, another element that was new. It was being presented for the first time to fans in a concert. I appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully they can build on this for if they decide to do anything more like this in the next 3-4 years, when they've got a catalogue of music. That leads us towards the end of their concert, of course, and this was the big one. And again, Ian, this came as a big surprise to people, where they suddenly announced that they were going to be hearing the new version of the iconic 60-year-old best television TV theme tune ever in the world, the bestest ever, in my opinion. And here it was coming along. I mean, what was the reaction when they announced this one, when Joe Wiley stood up there saying, "Oh, by the way, we're just about to play the new theme"?
Yeah, there was definitely people calling for oxygen at this point. It was more than they could cope with, I think. Yeah, I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of Julie Gardner, but I was quite excited as well at this point. You know,
you're trying to act cool in front of the execs, are you?
Yeah. Stay calm. But yeah, I mean, this was the icing on the cake, wasn't it? This is the cherry. It's if you wanted to hear anything, you want to hear the theme, and such a buzz of excitement, and it took a while for people to calm down before they were able to start playing it. There was such
really? So there's actually an edit between them announcing it and them actually playing it, because the fans are too busy going, "Ah!"
And there was a massive after it as well. There was a huge round of applause, and at that point, the conductor left the stage and then came back for to take the bow again, and said, "Shall we do it one more time?" and played it again. So they actually played it twice, literally within 2 minutes of each other. And
very interesting.
Yeah, it went down very well. I think it made me think, have they stumbled a little bit first? It does the intro, and then it almost does a little stumble.
You can hear it.
Yeah,
you can hear it. Yeah, they go off key a hell of a lot.
Yeah, and I hope that's not part of the actual. You know, I hope it's a little bit more refined. But
well, I'm hoping that's down to nerves, with it being the first time that they played this particular version, because I've listened to this. Now, this, again, is one of these things where we're all divided again. Already, we're all divided about this. And the feedback from fans has been obviously immense. And again, I think it's one of these things that's very 50-50. I myself, at this point, I need to see it with titles, because it didn't work for me. I have to be very honest. I don't like that twinkly bit at the beginning. I would like to say to Murray Gold, would you stop adding your own elements to the theme tune? It's not yours. It's Ron Grainer's and Delia Derbyshire's. Stop adding bits to it. Just play it as written originally. And would you please put the radiophonic bits back into it? I can't stand all this. The Doctor Who theme to me should be mysterious and eerie with all those. I didn't hear any of that in, and that's why I need to see it with titles, because that might be added in, and I'm hoping it is, just like his first go, which I think was probably his best to date. First bit where you had all those elements in, and it felt like Doctor Who again. So I'm actually very interested and very I'm looking forward to hearing it with titles, if that makes sense at all.
I think it does. I think visually it makes a difference, because when you watch the titles with the sound off, it's a very different experience. So you have to think about what it's like with the visuals, because when the first theme came out with Murray for 2005, it worked brilliantly together. I think this new version is a mixture. It feels like a mixture of the Smith and Capaldi one, with a hint of the TV movie in there, the piano bits.
Yeah.
But it does need the visual elements for me to make it. I did like it, but I need to see it like UJT together with the visuals to see if it actually works as a theme with the titles.
Yeah,
but
because the thing is, when you hear it in the concert, whatever the theme has been from the original Murray Gold one all the way through, you hear the full version rather than the intro to an episode, and then you get a fuller version at the end. Well, actually, you don't. You get somebody talking over it, then an announcer ruining it. So I was trying to work out. Obviously, that beginning that you don't like, JT, that the added bit. Is that it? You see, has Murray Gold composed this to some sequence?
Yes, probably.
Like the TARDIS going past or something.
Yeah, so there's something happening, just like the original one when we went from time to space, that one. I'm just trying to work out whether he's added that for a reason. And then I love the way it builds this time really confidently. I love the musical, the piano bit. I love that bit. And I don't think it's just a touch to McGann. I think it's just a lovely bit.
Yeah.
I don't think, and this is where I agree with JT and I disagree with JT. I think the programme should sound darker and in a way slower. But I also understand nowadays who's watching TV, we're trying to grab an audience. And I suppose RTD is going for, fast and brash and
Well, it's more of the same. I mean, some of the quotes that I've seen on Twitter, X, from fans, not keen on the extended intro, but it's pretty much bog standard gold. Shame there's no Delia anymore. I get that though. Another one, it's like a cross between Gold's other attempts. Not keen. I prefer the electronic version much better. Another one saying it's very typical Murray Gold. And another one, it's like one of these cheap Munich Philharmonic does TV themes that you got churned out in the 70s and the 80s. Remember them?
Like Jeff Love, you mean?
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Yeah. It's like a mix of Smith and Capaldi, which is what you guys were saying.
Yeah.
And both those versions were bad. However, we do have on the other side of the coin, this is possibly going to be the best Murray Gold version to date. We've got another one saying, I got very excited hearing this. This is somebody that was actually there with you, Ian, as well. Got very excited hearing this. Was absolutely delighted to hear it. Can't wait to see it on screen. And there's another one that's in favour of it here, saying, I can't wait to see what the titles are. Obviously, the music is going to be matching the new titles. And I think, again, that's for me. I have to see that. Because if you remember the Tom Baker ones for me, which is always going to be the pinnacle. Nobody has been able to beat that, although Peter Howell came very close. That is mine. But you've got that beautiful beginning of the titles, where it's black and the two blue lines come through. Now that is where he might have actually had to add this little bit here to build up mystery. I don't know. we're going to be reviewing this here on Who's Views when we see the actual episodes, when we see the titles. We're all going to be talking about it when we come to reviewing the episodes.
When you're listening to that music, which is 1 minute and a bit, I'm still trying to guess where do we lead into the episode, because the Tom Baker one would scream into the episode. And
so did the Tennant episodes, didn't it? It had that. They had what used to be our end music.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, and I hope they've retained that, because that's a great way to come into it. Because if you're just going to do twinkly twinkly plodding, it's not very dramatic into an episode, assuming that they're going to do the pre-title sequences again, because we don't know yet. We just don't know what the new series is going to
look like. I wonder if the piano bits in the theme are Ruby joining in. You think?
I don't know.
Flying down the tunnel with a piano.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think
again.
What's interesting with this, though, is that when they were doing the theme, the choristers were in it as well. There's definite vocal in there.
That's very Murray Gold, though, Ian, don't you think? I mean, they're in everything, aren't they?
They seem very prominent, which makes me think I'm not sure this is sort of like the refined version.
Oh, I see.
For me, the Tom Baker, I mean, my absolute favourite is, which is very close to the Tom Baker, is the very last series, John Pertwee, where it went to the tunnel. And
it's very close. Yeah, very close.
What eventually morphed into the Tom Baker one. And that, because it used to scare you, didn't it? It was like, that anticipation, that fear, whereas now it is brash. And
I mean, that's the difference. That theme tune always took us as kids into another world. Even the time tunnel with the TARDIS and the Doctor's face was taking you into the Doctor's world. It was taking you out of reality. You got that feeling. Remember, as kids, you were going into there. You had that eerie sound from the fabulous Delia Derbyshire around you as well. This was not reality. This was not where you were. You were coming through.
The thing about this
lost,
is,
I think.
Yeah, the thing about this is as well, if they're using the diamond logo in the titles with this music, how's that going to look? That'll be interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully, you know, they've got a title sequence that's going to suit that logo, because there's a lot. I mean, I've always said, if you're going to use that logo, you have a lot of responsibility, because I will expect huge things to justify the use of that logo.
JT, consider this. Could that be the theme music for the 60th specials, but not for Shooty?
Well, I've asked this. Possibly, nobody seems to actually understand. It looks like it might be transferring over, but you know what Murray Gold is like? Series 1 was different to Series 2. Series 2 was different to Series 3. Series 3 was different to the Christmas special, and then that was different to Series 4. Then we got another one in Series 5. Series 6 was amended too. You can't stop fiddling, if you'll pardon the expression. You know, I mean, this is what I suppose a lot of people would call this being perfectionist. I call it quite irritating, because I loved Year 1, the Eccleston Year 1. I didn't really like all the bangs and whistles and toilet seats that were going into Year 4.
The guitar one I didn't like very much. The one that started with the guitar, the twangy bit at the start. Remember that one?
Yeah. I mean, why do it? I mean, but this is why, you know, again, as being a fan of a certain age, we had the same theme music for years and years and years. And that's why it was such a radical shock in 1980, for crying out loud. You know, you know, the 80s have arrived, Bananarama, woo! You know, it was just totally bizarre.
Can you remember the music for the trailer? For the Chris Eccleston's trailer, it was a slower version, and it almost had an Aboriginal kind of vibe to it.
It did, and that was quite beautiful. That was quite beautiful. But I liked that. But I remember that it's because they weren't ready to give out the original theme tune. They weren't ready to present it for whether it was it wasn't either ready, or they were keeping it as a surprise. But by God, it was a surprise that night, 26th of March. You remember? You thought, oh my goodness, that's brilliant. Wow.
Yeah. But
he's back, and it's for more than one night.
What are you saying there, Brendan?
No, that slower Aboriginal vibe I thought was very, very atmospheric.
Yeah, that's what.
Whereas we had the bands and whistles one later, which was fine, and had to defeat Ant and Dec. They were the main enemy, weren't they? And so, we got that. Would a general viewer think the music's really changed since 2005? We know, but I
think people do. I mean, you know, I always go by my mum, and she notices when the theme tune, because my poor mother had to listen to it every Saturday night for years because it was on. You know, so she knew that, and also because she came to it, you know, via myself, but it was around in the 60s when she's going out and stuff like this. She would have heard it, but it was so familiar, of course. No, I think there's not one person in Britain that doesn't know that theme tune, I can guarantee you. But also because, you know, we've all grown up with it in a sense, apart from a certain generation who will recognise it too. And now they're going back to watch the DVDs and everything. Yeah, they'll know it.
Well, what I mean is the kids I've taught, you know, that this generation through Doctor Who, in a way that from 2005 to now, they'll think that's the same theme just about.
No, I think when it comes to it, I think you will always notice the differences. You can actually tell the difference between each of the ones he's done for each series. You really can. I mean, look at the Capaldi one; it's completely different to Eccleston's. You know, I mean, you were mentioning the moody type of stuff. Dominic Glynn's nails that down completely and utterly, doesn't it? You know, give him the ability to do something today. There's a big hint from me to everybody. You know, I mean, goodness knows where he'd be able to go with all this sort of stuff and what he would evoke through that. But again, I'm reserving my judgment on the theme tune for the 2023 and possibly beyond until we see the actual episodes and the titles. Not long to go now. Not long to go at all until all is revealed. That's it. That's all they played. Joe Wiley said, to end this off, it's all looking very promising. Let's hope she's right, Who viewers. In this November 2023, the Doctor's 60th anniversary year, the diamond year indeed, and we will be here all the way through. We can't wait now to see what the episodes are going to be looking like. We are going to be here on this very channel on Who's Views, reviewing those episodes as they hit. For now, I'd like to say thank you to the panel for joining me on this very special Sound of WHOSIC review of the 60th anniversary concert. And before we go, I think, seeing as we were just talking about the theme tune, I think we just need to big up and say very big thank you to these two, to Ron Grainer and to Delia Derbyshire for creating what is the best television theme tune in the world, in the history of the universe ever. Thank you. Well remembered. And let's just hope that the new version that hits our screens lives up to their legacy. On that note, it's time for us to say goodbye for now. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Ian. Thank you to Brendan. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Hope you've enjoyed watching us. Please do like and do subscribe to the channel. November 2023 is a very busy month for us here on the channel. We've got lots of content coming to you. Some is recorded and some will be live. Some of it we don't even know when it's going to be. So let's put it all out there. So until we see you again, thank you very much for joining this show, Overture, as part of Sound Diffusion Project. We will see you again very, very soon. Until next time, thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.